Chapter 831. Hundreds of swords silently hovered behind him. Gu Qingshan could sense the state of each sword, their trembling and their position. With a single thought, these swords would follow his orders to kill any enemy. These swords were like his limbs, or more like the manifestation of his thoughts. In both his previous and current lives, Gu Qingshan had never experienced such a thing before. He had an epiphany. I've broken through. Indeed, in this phantom image of the age of old, he had already surpassed the normal definition of a sword saint. Lines of glowing text quickly appeared on the war god UI. Void Beholder Realm, able to control flying swords at will, a total of 700 swords. The next time your cultivation increases, you will be able to control a total of 1,200 flying swords. This is a leapfrogging breakthrough. You've finally broken through the shackles of swordsmanship and reached the realm of one with the sword. From now on, you will be able to control hundreds of thousands of flying swords at will, using your mind to control the swords to perform various sword techniques, secret techniques, or powerful sword formations. This is the great achievement realm of a sword saint. Gu Qingshan felt a bit emotional. This was a fragment of the age of old. Because it was a fragment, it couldn't influence the final course of the age of old. But these moments were all real. In fact, Gu Qingshan could even cultivate here, obtain soul points, and become stronger. The reason why it was a fragment was because humanity had tried their best to create a complete parallel world, but still couldn't create a complete parallel world, only able to create fragments. Even so, this ability had already surpassed the understanding of normal people. Not even the divinities could fathom it. That's why they had been waiting for someone several 10,000 years later to uncover this secret. Where did this ability to create spacetime come from? Gu Qingshan didn't have time to think about that. The huge commotion caused by the flying swords was immediately noticed by the desolate monsters. Several dozen monsters with spikes all over their bodies pulled out a spike from their bodies and threw it at Gu Qingshan. The sharp spikes howled as they flew towards Gu Qingshan. Gu Qingshan reached his hand forward. The enormous sword wings floating behind his back immediately scattered into flying sword shadows and appeared in front of him in an instant. The flying swords converged together to form a huge, sharp hand that glowed with a cold sword light. Gu Qingshan waved her hand casually. The giant hand formed by the flying swords waved. Dang 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 dang. The long spikes were all sent flying by the giant hand. Gu Qingshan's gaze swept across the sky. All the long thorns stopped moving. Azure lightning flashed from the long spike. Gu Qingshan took over the thorns like flying swords. Whoosh, 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 the light streaked across the void. The spikes flew back to the desolate monsters' camp at an even faster speed, piercing through many of their bodies and skewering them together. Gu Qingshan didn't wait any longer. The sword array was ready. He activated the Tai sword technique and controlled all the flying swords to scatter and disappear into the void, shuttling along with the strong wind. The sword array descended from the sky. Wind and thunder arrived together. The sound of continuous explosions resounded in the wind. This was the sound of countless flying swords infused with the power of lightning, flying through the void at a breakneck speed. If that was all, the desolate monsters wouldn't be afraid. But the situation was a bit out of their expectations. Any monster that was hit by the wind would be frozen in place, unable to move. Following that, the flying swords would appear from the void of space, circling around the monsters and slashing their bodies with extreme speed. With the sound of piercing air, the monsters were slowly devoured by the sword phantoms. The sword-infused wind turned blood-red. The wind continued to blow. The intense wind howled towards the densely packed horde of monsters. 5 breaths worth of time later, everyone stopped what they were doing, apparently unable to believe what they were seeing. On the entire battlefield, a large empty space appeared. All the desolate monsters that were originally in that area were erased by the sword array. Gu Gu Qingshan stopped. The sword array ended. Notifications of combat appeared on the war god UI one after another. You've killed a desolate creeper, soul points increased by 50,000. You've killed a desolate spiky beast, soul points increased by 90,000. You've killed a desolate guardian, soul points increased by 180,000. Although they were all soldier-class monsters, their sheer numbers still gave Gu Qingshan a large amount of soul points. The human cultivators cheered and charged forward. Gongzi, congratulations on breaking through, but you've used a lightning element that doesn't exist in this world and killed so many desolate soldiers at once, so your situation might be very dangerous, Shanu reminded him. I know, Gu Qingshan replied. If a divinity had followed him to this world, they wouldn't need to do anything other than carefully investigate this war to quickly find out who he was. At that time, his life and death would be a different story. Even if the pursuers didn't come, after the war was over, Gu Qingshan would still have to face the problem of his identity. This was the final battle, so as long as he was human, no one would care about his spirit energy or identity. But after the war was over, both the divinities and humanity of this world would definitely notice him. Such destructive power that countered the desolate monsters, what kind of power is this? For Gu Qingshan, this was the price he had to pay for being impulsive. But then again, if it weren't for his stubborn determination to face his conviction to the death, Gu Qingshan wouldn't have been able to successfully evolve despite the pain. He stopped for a bit and coldly observed the situation of the battlefield. At this point, humanity had already gained the upper hand. Many of the places where the two sides were still in a stalemate, his flying swords were already flying towards them, unleashing lightning element sword phantoms to force the desolate monsters to defend themselves. Gu Qingshan leapt up high. His entire body fused into the hundreds of flying swords, unleashing the power of lightning around his body as he flew across the battlefield with all of them. Every monster that he slashed became immobilized on the spot, only to have their lives taken away by the flying swords that came after. The scales of victory were already tilting in humanity's favor. Let's go, Gu Qingshan told Shanu. He brought the hundreds of flying swords across the entire battlefield, heading towards the farthest point. That was his true destination. The powerful human cultivators and the divinities had banded together to stop the rulers of the Age of Desolation at the border between the two worlds. To prevent the overly powerful monsters from entering the front lines and slaughtering human cultivators, the divinities had explicitly forbidden normal cultivators from crossing the front lines. Because any desolate leader was in existence that normal cultivators couldn't possibly fight against. The border could only be guarded by the strongest human cultivators and the divinities. While flying, Gu Qingshan recalled the war records he read before. According to the records, the border of the two worlds this time was the desolate world's western desolate and the heaven realm's cold jade forest. The war between the divinities erupted in that vast area. As for the place where that divinity died, Gu Qingshan quickly determined the direction based on the terrain. He was heading towards a forest full of green trees. Indeed, this was the place where that divinity and the desolate monsters fought and died, the heaven realm's cold jade forest. As Gu Qingshan observed the forest, he suddenly realized something. Something's not right. Birds were flying freely in the sky above the forest. There were also many beasts in the forest. Although the living beings of this world have seen the battle between cultivators and spirit energy, they wouldn't be able to survive such an intense battle. From afar, Gu Qingshan put his flying swords away, turned into a bird, and flew towards the sky. He blended into the group of birds and also made it seem like he was flying in circles. After flying for a while, he noticed that there wasn't any battle in the forest, nor were there any divinities or monsters. Did I remember wrong? No, that can't be. The divinity died during the second half of the war around noon. Gu Qingshan looked at the sun and regained his senses. It's not that time yet. That's good. But how am I supposed to stay in this forest without being discovered by the divinities and monsters? While flying, Gu Qingshan fell into deep thought. Roar! All of a sudden, an earth-shattering roar resounded. The desolate monsters are coming! As soon as it spoke, countless beasts in the forest were knocked unconscious. The birds in the sky also cried out in pain as they fell. Seeing this, Gu Qingshan silently cheered. That's good. Chapter 832. The Cold Jade Forest. On a tall tree branch, 2 unconscious birds fell down one after the other, caught in the thick foliage. Gu Qingshan was one of them. He was lying under the wing of the other bird, completely crushed. Gu Qingshan moved a bit and pushed the bird away. The bird opened its eyes to look at Gu Qingshan. Gu Qingshan could only glare at it. The bird fell into a deeper state of unconsciousness. Seeing that the problem was solved, Gu Qingshan also closed his bird eyes, laid down on the tree branch, and pretended to be unconscious. Time silently passed. It was getting closer and closer to noon. Loud noises that shook the entire forest could be heard from afar. That was the other side of the border, the desolate world's western desolation. Because they were separated by a world, the intense tremors on the other side had been weakened several times over here. But for this forest, it was still a destructive shockwave. A few moments later, a voice angrily shouted from above, "A bunch of untrustworthy scum!" Hearing that, Gu Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. This was the desolate language. He held his breath, closed his eyes, and only used his inner sight to observe the situation outside. Without any warning, a blinding streak of light with a long trail of flames crashed straight into the forest. Boom! A large crater appeared. The invisible shockwave blew away hundreds of trees, turning the entire forest into a mess. Gu Qingshan allowed the force to blow him away without putting up any resistance. He tumbled in the air along with the wind before landing on the muddy ground. He understood that this was a time of war, and as a top-tier monster, he would immediately notice if anything went wrong. Gu Qingshan kept his eyes closed, only releasing his inner sight to observe the situation. A dim light emerged from the deep pit, and at the same time, a barely dignified voice rang out. "Esteemed Lord of Desolation, you have completely misunderstood." Another voice came from the void of space. "Misunderstood? Indeed, as the king of the deities, I can guarantee you that we have always followed the agreement of divinity. The one who was beaten to the ground was the God King." Gu Qingshan was terrified, and she didn't even dare to release a trace of her aura. Could it be that the one who died was the Divine King? That made sense. No wonder the gods kept quiet about the identity of the fallen god and forbade the human race from investigating this matter. The enraged voice sounded again. "I came from the other side of the Age of Desolation and avoided the allied army of you and the human race in order to hear your explanation with my own ears, yet you're saying that I've misunderstood?" "Yes, it's a misunderstanding. I guarantee that I can explain this matter," the Divine King said. "Speak, I'm listening." "The reason we created so many worlds was because we wanted to revisit the past. We wanted to see what the humans of the bygone era were thinking before they decided to give up everything and enter that gate." A disdainful sneer resounded in the void. "You, with just these things, you want to pry into the ultimate secret of the bygone era?" The Lord of Desolation mocked. The Divine King raised his voice. "At least we're investigating, not doing nothing at all. We're trying our best to find the secret within." The Lord of Desolation went silent for a bit, then spoke. "You're trying to say that you didn't violate our agreement, right?" "That is indeed the case," the Divine King replied. At this point, a streak of light descended from above and stood guard by the Divine King's side. "Your Majesty, I'll protect you," the streak of light said. "No need," the Divine King replied. "I believe that once the Lord of Desolation understands the truth of this matter, you won't go to war over it again." "Indeed," the Lord of Desolation followed up, "but as long as you don't try to do anything behind my back, I naturally won't go to war. The Divine King raised his voice. That's why, and this invasion. Lord of Desolation, you've already scared my people to death. As long as you return to the Desolation era, I guarantee you that I will give you as much human flesh as you want. The Lord of Desolation cheerfully replied. That is completely possible, as long as you answer one more question. Go ahead, the Divine King replied. You stole that thing from the Desolation Abyss. I'll do as you say because you wanted to create a world and use it to investigate the secrets of the bygone era, or in consideration of your meticulous efforts in raising humans and helping me produce high-quality meat, I won't pursue the matter. The Lord of Desolation paused for a bit, then spoke with a soft voice. But how dare you hide it from me and create the samsara? A dull sound. A seven-colored spear abruptly manifested from the void of space and pierced through the Divine King's body. Aark, the Divine King uttered a long scream, clutching the seven-colored spear with both hands and begged, "No, spare me!" From the void of space, the Lord of Desolation's voice continued. The samsara is not something I can control. You dared to imitate the power of humans and create it. That is challenging my authority. The Divine King knelt down, all the light around his body faded. The seven-colored spear only managed to pierce through once before the Divine King's divine armor shattered and fell to the ground. The Divine King now looked exactly like a human, but the white flame between his eyebrows was still twitching. Enduring the pain, he breathed heavily. Lord of Desolation, the samsara has only just been created, it doesn't have any power. I offer it to you. Divine King, you fool, you wanted to fight me but didn't dare to say so, instead you dared to covet the samsara. Perhaps you don't know this, but while this thing is very weak right now, it will grow by itself and eventually become a powerful force for humanity, one that even you and I won't be able to control. From the void of space, the Lord of Desolation's voice carried a heavy sense of mockery. Pitiful and pitiful fool, if you had resisted me, or if you had grown a bit stronger and dared to challenge me in a head-on fight for a few dozen rounds without losing, I would have admired you, but you foolishly coveted that kind of power that you can't control. That is the reason why I want to kill you. The seven-colored spear gave off a blinding light that pierced through the Divine King's body. No. Stop right now. The other ball of flame that was standing guard next to the Divine King shouted. It shot towards the void of space. The spear was pulled out and lightly swung. The ball of flame was sent flying, creating a slope of dirt several hundred meters long. The ball of flame was extinguished, turning into a pile of broken armor. A celestial race warrior appeared. He also looked similar to a human, but there was a blue flame burning between his eyebrows. Damn it! He was coughing up blood, but his body was heavily wounded, so he could only watch as the seven-colored spear pierced through the Divine King's body again. The Divine King reached his hand out, seemingly wanting to catch the spear again. But it was futile. He knelt on the ground, the blue flame between his eyebrows slowly extinguished. His head drooped down. The spear was pulled away. The Divine King died. The Lord of Desolation's voice resounded from the void of space. In consideration of your loyalty as a guard, I'll spare your life. Help me bring a message to your race. I've already destroyed the samsara. You are not allowed to touch that thing again, otherwise, you will end up like the Divine King. Continue to nurture humans for me. Right, you can choose another Divine King now. I will personally come to the battlefield between the two worlds after I've picked out a few high-level cultivators and eaten them. We will retreat from now on. Learn from your mistakes and be more obedient. The suffocating pressure in the void of space slowly disappeared. The Lord of Desolation had left. The blue flame divinity waited for a while longer. It wasn't until he heard terrifying screams from afar that he struggled to stand up. But the seven-colored spear was so powerful that the blue flame divinity only managed to stagger a bit before collapsing again. The blue flame divinity looked at the Divine King's corpse with reluctance. He simply crawled in front of the Divine King's corpse. This forced movement affected his injuries, causing him to spit out a few more mouthfuls of blood. But the blue flame divinity didn't care. He carefully checked the divine king's corpse. All of a sudden, he looked up and laughed maniacally. Ah ha ha ha, he's finally dead. From now on, no one will be a match for me. I am the next divine king. He was unprecedentedly focused on inspecting the corpse, and then he fell into great joy, so he didn't notice the subtle things around him. While the blue flame divinity was checking the divine king's corpse, inside a fallen tree several dozen miles away from where he was, a winged feather bird opened its eyes. At the very next moment, the winged feather bird disappeared. All of a sudden, a six-legged winged snake manifested behind the blue flame divinity. This wasn't the one that Gu Qingshan faced before, but rather an intact, unharmed six-legged winged snake. This was a high-ranking monster of the desolate race. Even after the Drifting Moon Immortal sect was destroyed, it was still able to survive countless battles. In just a few moments, the blue flame divinity looked up and laughed maniacally. Ah ha ha ha, finally dead. From now on, no one will be a match for me. I am the next divine king. His voice abruptly stopped. When the six-legged winged snake used its full strength, it would unleash 3 types of attacks at once. The first was a sound soul vessel attack that would cause one's mind to become hazy. The second was an invisible spatial slash. The third was an intense pounce. In that split second, a low screeching sound abruptly resounded. The blue flame divinity's head was cut off by the six-legged winged snake, bit it, chewed it a few times, then spat it back out. The blue flame divinity was dead. The six-legged winged snake rolled on the ground and turned back into Gu Qingshan. He tapped his inventory bag, took out a gourd of liquor, and quickly rinsed his mouth. Shanu didn't care about how brutal his attack was just now and hurriedly asked, Gongzi, didn't you say that we can't break the rules of history? Why did you kill one as well? Did you lose control of yourself again? That's not it. Gu Qingshan looked at the soul points value on the war god UI that was rapidly increasing, then checked the system notification and the amount of soul points he needed and slowly calmed down. He slowly spoke. You and I both know very well that I had already been exposed the moment I used my lightning thaumaturgy to kill the enemies at the front lines. As the saying goes, lice don't itch when there are too many, debts don't worry when there are too many. Since I've already been exposed, I might as well do something big and change my identity to avoid being discovered, Shanu doubtfully asked. Gongzi means. She abruptly went silent, only to see Gu Qingshan standing in front of her, a blue flame slowly manifesting between his eyebrows. His entire body slowly turned into the blue flame divinity. Only the divine king died here, and as the first divinity to arrive here, I was also heavily wounded by the Lord of Desolation. Following this, I will relay the Lord of Desolation's will to all of my divine race companions. All of this perfectly overlaps with history. If someone were to come to this phantom image, they would find that history hasn't changed at all. Chapter 833. The intense sound of battle could be heard from afar, as well as the continuous screams of pain. That was the Lord of Desolation displaying his might at the border of the two worlds. While he still had a bit of time, Gu Qingshan closed his eyes and silently sensed the miraculous changes happening to his body. He found that after he turned into the blue flame divinity, the 5 elemental elements had become exceptionally close to him. The world in front of his eyes had also changed. The 5 elemental spirit energy in the void of space had almost reached a visible level. Red was fire, yellow was gold, brown was earth, green was wood, and blue was water. Among them, the power of water elemental energy was constantly resonating with him, almost like an extension of his will. This feeling was similar to the connection he had with his hundreds of flying swords after reaching great accomplishment as a sword saint. Blue flame, Gu Qingshan muttered and reached his hand out. A drop of water in his hand turned into ice, then gave off a deep blue glow. Starting from where Gu Qingshan was standing, white frost quickly spread all over the ground and continued to spread. Gu Qingshan was surprised. So the blue flame represented the ability to control water elemental energy. But is it only controlling water elemental energy? While Gu Qingshan was thinking, he suddenly had a thought. Instantly, his body vanished into thin air and turned into an omnipresent frigid fog. It was as if his body was made entirely out of ice. Gu Qingshan gathered his body again. He raised his hand. His hand easily scattered into fine frigid fog, then quickly reformed into a hand. Not water. This seems to be another form of water. Frost. Then, what kind of entity is a divinity? At this point, the war god UI was flashing with notifications. Gu Qingshan stopped thinking and looked at the war god UI. You've used 1 million soul points to transform into a 6-legged winged snake. You've killed the god of frost and chill, obtaining 800,000 soul points. You've used 900,000 soul points to transform into the god of frost and chill. Reading through the UI notifications, Gu Qingshan couldn't help but ask, "System, I only obtained 300,000 soul points from killing the 6-legged winged snake. Why does it cost more soul points to transform into it than to become a divinity?" Ting. The system responded. "Thank you for 10 soul points. Answer as follows: because the 6-legged winged serpent is a unique desolate creature, a weapon-type beast created by the bygone-era humans, using its body to carry the meager power that the bygone-era humans bestowed upon it. Therefore, when you transform into a snake, you will automatically grasp these inherited abilities of the human race. These are the 3 abilities you use to kill the god." Gu Qingshan understood and asked, "In other words, when I turn into a snake, I have to pay the soul points for the transformation, as well as the inheritance of those humans?" Indeed, soul points is the most fundamental power. Without it, your mystery of all beings equal wouldn't be able to complete its inheritance, the system replied. "What if I become a primordial guardian? Don't tell me it also needs additional soul power?" "Oh no, the desolate guardians are intelligent humanoid creatures. You'll need to level up your war god skills twice in order to comprehend their desolate abilities, and you'll be able to use those abilities after returning to your original form. In other words, the 6-legged winged serpent is very special, which is why it can directly inherit those abilities." "Correct. But I don't have those abilities in reserve right now, do I?" "Oh, as I said, the serpent is special. It relies on the unique structure of its body to exert the meager power of the bygone-era humans. When you use the mystery to construct its body, you're also constructing those abilities, so when you're not a snake, you naturally won't be able to use those abilities." Gu Qingshan shrugged helplessly. "I've already become a divinity, but I still haven't comprehended any divinity abilities. That's easy to understand. Aside from the abilities that the bygone-era humans inherited through beasts, you'll have to learn the abilities of all other races through war god skills. After which, those abilities will become yours." The system continued. "In summary, you only need 900,000 soul points to transform into a divinity, but you need 1 million soul points to transform into a 6-legged winged serpent." Gu Qingshan regretfully clapped her hands. 1 million soul points was gone in a single moment. I didn't even get to learn a single ability. In other words, turning into a snake, then into a divinity cost me a total of 1.9 million soul points. Killing God only earned me 800,000. If I knew this earlier, I wouldn't have killed this divinity. I would have stayed in my 6-legged winged serpent form and wandered around the desolate world for a bit. A 6-legged winged serpent can already be considered a passable desolate creature, and I can speak desolate tongue, speak nicely, and act smartly. I'll definitely be able to survive quite well in the desolate world. What a huge loss this time." Gu Qingshan's gaze couldn't help but fall onto a certain location on the war god Yua. "I still have 1.7 million soul points remaining." Gu Qingshan slowly sighed in relief. "Fortunately, I earned quite a bit from the slaughterhouse, as well as killing quite a few desolate soldiers at the front lines to save up." Otherwise, how am I supposed to survive from now on? Looking at the remaining soul points, Gu Qingshan felt a bit more confident. With this much soul points, what do I have to be afraid of? He quickly walked up to the ice deity's corpse, crouched down, and placed his hand on a circular long rod next to the tattered armor. Just now, when the ice deity tried to attack with this rod, it was heavily wounded by a single swing of the seven-colored spear. Seems like this was the ice deity's weapon. Since Gu Qingshan had turned into the ice deity, he had to learn its skills, otherwise he would still be exposed. The icon representing War God's skills lit up on the War God UI. Item discovered: Frost Staff. You cannot comprehend a divine skill from this item. Gu Qingshan was surprised. Why not? Thank you for 10 soul points, because your War God skills has yet to be upgraded. You cannot comprehend the divine skill created by imitating humans. The sound of battle from afar slowly became weaker. The Lord of Desolation's voice resounded across the entire world. Foolish things, you must remember this lesson. Rumble, rumble, the earth trembled. The two worlds began to separate. There wasn't much time left. Gu Qingshan clenched her teeth and said, I'll spend 1 million soul points to upgrade War God skills. Received 1 million soul points, War God skills upgrade complete. The system replied. You finished upgrading it so quickly? Of course, the system had already prepared it. But why don't I sense any changes in the system? Gu Qingshan doubtfully asked. The system paused. On the War God UI, the icon for War God skills was jumping. Did you see it? The icon is jumping now, the system casually asked. Alright, now I want to comprehend those divine skills. Gu Qingshan said. Lines of glowing text appeared on the War God UI. All the divine skills that the God of Frost and Chill had performed were displayed on the UI. Unfortunately, there weren't a lot of them, and each of them was very useful, so Gu Qingshan couldn't give up on any of them. He stared closely at the UI and cautiously asked, I want to ask again, after I've grasped these skills, I should be able to keep them, right? Of course you can, you'll always keep these skills, but as you're a human, your control over the 5 elements isn't as strong as that of a divinity, so the power of these divine skills will be greatly reduced. Gu Qingshan sighed in relief. As long as I can grasp them, I don't want to go through the process of turning into a snake again. Use soul points to comprehend them all, he said. Are you sure? The system asked. I'm sure, a few moments later. His comprehension was complete. This time, Gu Qingshan had truly become the God of Frost and Chill. However, he didn't seem to be happy at all. Instead, he seemed a bit sad. Because a certain number on the War God UI had almost reached 0. Chapter 834. A bronze coin was spinning in the air. When it fell, it was caught by a hand. The figure of light. The figure of light held the coin and carefully sensed the change in power within. How is it? The golden flame divinity asked from the side. The coin has regained its power and can be used. The figure of light nodded. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go now. The golden flame divinity couldn't wait any longer. The figure of light held the desolate coin and spoke seriously. You don't worry about anything in those phantom images, our only goal is to find that person. Capture him, or kill him naturally, the golden flame divinity replied. It was now that the figure of light nodded and activated the coin. A surge of power came from the coin and enveloped both it and the golden flame divinity. Ho! Under the guidance of the coin, the golden flame divinity and the figure of light went through the endless fog of spacetime, passed through countless phantom images of the age of old, and finally entered a phantom image of a certain era. The primordial heaven realm. 2 streaks of light appeared at a certain location on the ground without any warning. The golden flame divinity. The figure of light. The 2 of them landed in a pile of rubble. What era is this? The golden flame divinity looked around and asked. Just find a divine palace and we'll know, the figure of light replied. The two of them leapt into the sky, flew all the way to the top of the clouds, and arrived at a certain transparent space at the very bottom of the sky. Their figures gradually turned into nothingness, as if they had seeped into another space. A few moments later, the figure of light and the golden flame divinity reappeared. There isn't a single person in the divine palace, there aren't a lot of times like this in history, the golden flame divinity commented. That's right, let's find a human nearby and ask them about the situation, the figure of light replied. They stopped in the sky for a bit and sensed something. To the southeast, there are many orderly spirit energy formations, most likely set up by a human cultivator. Let's go. The golden flame divinity looked down at the human cultivators below and asked. Which means the drifting moon immortal palace has already been destroyed. Indeed, divinity, a human cultivator respectfully replied. The figure of light asked. Any news from the front lines? The human cultivator replied. For today is the decisive battle, all the divinities have gone to the front lines, including the strongest of humanity. The golden flame divinity and the figure of light exchanged glances. They understood the moment in history. Very well, you may leave, the figure of light said. The human cultivator bowed respectfully and prepared to leave. Wait! The golden flame cultivator shouted. I ask you, has anything strange happened recently? He asked. Something strange. You mean? The cultivator was confused. It was now that the golden flame divinity realized that he was being too hasty. It's fine. You can go. He waved his hand. The human cultivator bowed once more before flying off into the distance. The figure of light shook his head. If you want to find something strange, why bother asking these people in the phantom images? We know very well what happened in history. If there is anything that deviates from history, it must have been done by that human. That's right, I was being too impatient, we can figure this out ourselves. The golden flame divinity replied. What do you think we should do now? To the front lines? The figure of light asked. Yes, but we must be careful. Why? Although it's only a phantom image, this time period is very dangerous. The golden flame divinity's voice sounded a bit unnatural. The figure of light asked. You mean, the Lord of Desolation? The golden flame divinity added. And that spear as well, he continued. In this time period I am a never-before-seen god, while you are the collective will of a never-before-seen god. What do you think the Lord of Desolation would do if he discovered us? The figure of light froze. He muttered. Indeed, the Lord of Desolation had once discovered our race's plan by himself. We don't even know how he discovered the samsara. The golden flame divinity continued. That's why it will be very dangerous for us to go there right now. At this point, silence replaced it. This was a part of the history recorded by both the divine race and the desolate race. And today, the Lord of Desolation wielded the seven-colored spear and easily killed the divine king. This was a bone-deep fear for all divinities. Even after several 10,000 years, the golden flame divinity didn't think he could face the Lord of Desolation. A few moments later, the golden flame divinity spoke. But we're here to capture someone, so we still have to go. The figure of light agreed. If that brat goes to the Wraith Realm again, we'll need a lot of manpower to attack the Wraith Realm. The golden flame divinity continued. After we go, we'll first stay close to the front lines and hide. When the desolate world and the heaven realm have separated, we'll meet up with the other divinities. Why are you in such a hurry? The figure of light asked. That brat is very slippery, I have a bad feeling, the golden flame divinity replied. Just like you said before, we don't need to care about this phantom image of history. We need to obtain the full cooperation of all the divinities and find that human as soon as possible. The figure of light muses. You want to? That's right, I want to let all the divinities know what happened in the future. I want them to help me capture that human. The golden flame divinity loudly declared. We'll depart right now, the figure of light said. They leapt into the sky and flew towards the front lines. A few hours later, the battle between the two worlds was slowly coming to an end. The Lord of Desolation's voice resounded across both worlds. Foolish things, you must remember this lesson. Rumble, rumble. The earth trembled. The two worlds began to separate. At this time, somewhere hidden at the front lines, the golden flame divinity and the figure of light were patiently waiting. When they sensed that the desolate world had completely left, they couldn't help but sigh in relief. The operation was about to begin. "What do you plan to do?" the figure of light asked. "Directly to the place where the divine king died. Most likely our entire race is there," the golden flame divinity replied. "Indeed, the divine king's death has only just been discovered, so everyone should be there. I remember it was the cold jade forest." Indeed, they disappeared from their hiding place. A few dozen seconds later, the cold jade forest. All the divinities had gathered here. The god of frost and chill was lying in a pool of his own blood, receiving treatment from two divinities. Not too far away from him, the divine king was still kneeling on the ground with his head lowered. The god of frost and chill continued to explain the divine king's death. "The Lord of Desolation blames us for bringing out the samsara. As you can see, the Lord of Desolation used his spear to kill our king." One of the divinities couldn't help but ask, "Was the battle intense? Why didn't we sense anything?" The god of frost and chill struggled to open his mouth. As he was about to answer, a voice resounded from above. "No, the battle wasn't intense. The Lord of Desolation only used his spear to stab the divine king twice. In truth, once was more than enough, but because of the god of frost and chill's interference, the Lord of Desolation managed to send him flying before stabbing the divine king again." The golden flame divinity and the figure of light floated over. All the divinities were looking at them. These were two entities they had never seen before, but the divinities could sense the presence of their own kind from them. This presence couldn't be fake. That was why the divinities didn't act right away. "Who are you?" one of the divinities shouted. The golden flame divinity replied, "The one next to me came from your future, while I came from the future several 10,000 years in the future." The divinities went silent. "I seem to recall that we have never grasped the secret of time," one of the divinities questioned. The figure of light tossed a coin into the air. "The desolation coin." All the divinities looked at the coin at once. A few moments later, all the divinities fell silent. The remnant power of space-time lingered around the coin, clearly visible as if it was solid. "This coin should be enough to prove our identities, not to mention that I am a manifestation of consciousness. You should know how I was created," the figure of light said. The divinities exchanged glances. A few divinities had already begun to nod. At this point, the god of frost and chill suddenly ignored his wounds and shouted, "That can't be right. Why did you appear as soon as the divine king died?" The figure of light and the golden flame divinity both froze. This was an awkward question. Our kind from the future. It sounded so mysterious and eye-catching, but this question hit a sore spot. If you came from the future, why didn't you stop the divine king's death? The golden flame divinity took a deep breath and replied, "Listen, even I have no way to deal with the Lord of Desolation, so I could only choose to appear at this time." He continued to explain. "Just look, I've already told you how the divine king died. That should be enough to prove my identity." "No, that's not enough," the god of frost and chill insisted. "Aside from myself, the Lord of Desolation also knows about the divine king's death. What if you're his people?" "I still have a way." While the golden flame divinity was explaining, the god of frost and chill cut him off. "Only if you can tell us everything that happened after today, and we've verified it without any mistakes, can we believe you." The golden flame divinity chuckled. "Why not?" He pointed at one of the divinities with a blinding light and spoke. "Strength God, after the god of frost and chill had fully recovered from his injuries, you attempted to compete against him for the divine king throne, but lost in the end. The reason you lost was because you didn't know that he had a special divine craft that specifically countered you." The god of frost and chill's divine craft was a unique ice craft that he obtained by imitating a certain powerful human from the bygone. Era the golden flame divinity abruptly turned around and looked at the god of frost and chill. I was right, wasn't I? That technique of yours is called Silent Seal, the most mysterious technique of all divine crafts. The god of frost and chill appeared surprised and exclaimed in shock. How did you know? The golden flame divinity stared closely at the god of frost and chill with a bit of disdain in his eyes. These old geezers from the age of old were indeed powerful, but they were too stubborn and their brains weren't that good either. What, do you still need me to tell you the Silent Seal's characteristics and flaws? The golden flame divinity raised his voice a bit. The god of frost and chill immediately shook his head. Enough! Say no more. Seeing his reaction, the golden flame divinity felt even more disdain. But this old geezer is still the new divine king, and I'll need the god of frost and chill's help to find that human. Chapter 835. You mean, I will die in the pursuit of 5 years later? The new king's voice rang out, with a hint of nervousness in it. Indeed, just like the previous divine king, you will be pierced by that spear and die on the spot, the golden flame divinity replied. The divine king's throne fell silent. That will not be a happy ending, the god of frost and chill muttered in a low voice. Even without the official coronation ceremony, this divinity was already destined to become the divine king, so he had the right to represent the entire divine race and talk to the envoy from the future. The golden flame divinity and the figure of light stood on the stairs below the throne, staring at the new divine king. The other divinities stood on both sides of the stairs, silently listening to their conversation. The golden flame divinity and the figure of light's identities had been proven, they were indeed from the future. The information they brought was trustworthy. Because of that, from this moment onwards, the other powerful divinities all gave up on trying to become the divine king. What a joke! They would have to face the wrath of the Lord of Desolation 5 years from now, so no matter who became the divine king, they would have to think of a way to get through this first. If they couldn't, they would lose their lives. On the divine king's throne, the god of frost and chill leaned forward with both hands on the throne, asking urgently, You came from the future, so you came to change everything? This new king's eyes showed a deep sense of anticipation and desire. The golden flame divinity went silent briefly, then decided to continue with his original plan. The god of frost and chill was very powerful, and he was currently the divine king. I have to be a bit more honest. Divine king, I will tell you everything that will happen in the next few years. This way, as long as you avoid those matters and escape ahead of time, you won't die, and history will be changed, the golden flame divinity said. Hearing that, the god of frost and chill calmed down. That's right, to avoid those matters, I need to prepare ahead of time, he muttered. Divine king, I will help you get through this, but I also have a small request. This request is related to the fate of our entire divine race, the golden flame divinity said. Speak, the god of frost and chill said. In the future, we will run into a new problem. A cultivator from the human race called Gu Qingshan was born. He obtained an item from the age of old that specifically counters us. Ever since then, many of our race's plans have been destroyed by him, many divinities have died at his hands, the golden flame divinity angrily said. The god of frost and chill narrowed his eyes. That's impossible. The humans have always been under our control. How could they have the ability to create something that could be used against us? The golden flame divinity didn't say anything and simply glanced at the divinities below the stairs. The god of frost and chill understood. All of you stand down, he ordered. Although the deities wanted to stay and listen to the future, the god king had spoken, so they had no choice but to leave the god palace. Very quickly, only the god of frost and chill, the golden flame divinity, and the figure of light remained in the divine palace. The golden flame divinity walked up the stairs and arrived in front of the throne. He lowered his voice and spoke. Gu Qingshan obtained 2 swords from the age of old, one as heaven, the other as earth. These two swords are known as the twin swords, each of them extremely powerful. The god of frost and chill shook his head. I still can't believe that humanity was able to create a weapon that could kill our race at this point. The golden flame divinity also appeared a bit confused. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Actually, in the future, we have done many reflections, but the human race has always been under our control and surveillance. We have never escaped, so we have never understood when they started to make those two weapons. The god of frost and chill pondered. Indeed, the upper echelons of humanity's sects, even their sect masters, are our loyal servants. The golden flame divinity continued. That's why I returned from the future to the present to find Gu Qingshan, kill him, and investigate humanity's ultimate secret. The god of frost and chill asked, "Can we take those two swords for ourselves?" "I'm not sure, everything about those two swords is a mystery," the golden flame divinity replied. The two of them went silent for a moment. "Wait a minute, since you appeared here, does that mean that Gu Qingshan is currently in this era of mine?" The god of frost and chill asked. "That is indeed the case," the golden flame divinity replied. "Do you know where he's hiding?" "I'm not sure, he might be in a human sect, or he might have gone to the Wraith realm. That's a bit troublesome. How about this, tell me everything that happened in the next few years, then I will send people to help you find that person," the god of frost and chill said. The golden flame divinity looked at him and slowly replied, "Very well, very fair." He began to tell the new divine king everything that happened in the next few years. During the crucial matters, he even patiently explained them to the divine king, reminding him to pay attention to those issues. Finally, everything was told. "Thank you," the god of frost and chill said. "I want to carefully consider everything you've told me, then completely change the future. A lot of things are secondary, the only thing you need to be careful of is the Lord of Desolation, no one can deal with him," the golden flame divinity reminded him. "Don't worry, I will keep an eye on him," the new divine king replied. At this point, a divinity appeared in the divine palace. "What is it?" the god of frost and chill asked. "During the decisive battle, humanity has just reported two suspicious developments," the divinity replied. He glanced at the golden flame divinity and the figure of light, then went silent. The golden flame divinity looked at the god of frost and chill. "It's fine, speak," the god of frost and chill nodded. The divinity then continued. Firstly, a cultivator who can use elemental lightning to kill the desolate monsters appeared. Many people at the front lines saw it with their own eyes. Secondly, the great sects of humanity have reported that several high-ranking great cultivators of humanity went missing at the border between the two worlds. The divine palace went silent. The golden flame divinity didn't mind. We all know what happened to the second point, most of them were eaten by the Lord of Desolation, only a few lucky ones managed to escape and return. You can directly tell them that those people went missing in the desolate world, the god of frost and chill said. Understood, the divinity accepted the order and left. The god of frost and chill continued. In other words, the most suspicious point is the first one, that human cultivator who can use elemental lightning. Indeed, this matter must be investigated further. Divine King, please give me some manpower, the golden flame divinity said. The god of frost and chill shouted towards the outside of the divine palace. Relay my divine decree, the 12 guardian deities are to follow the golden flame divinity to search. Thank you, your divine majesty, the golden flame divinity said in satisfaction. No need to be so polite. I still have to thank you for your information, the god of frost and chill replied. The golden flame divinity and the figure of light bowed to him, then left the divine palace. They left to search for the elemental lightning cultivator. Inside the divine palace, only the new divine king, the god of frost and chill, was sitting on his throne. He fell into thought. According to the golden flame divinity, 5 months later, I will face a rebellion and usurpation. From the timeline, this should be the closest I've ever been to a crisis. However, there's a change. All the divinities now know that the Divine King will be killed by the Lord of Desolation again in 5 years. If that's the case, the rebellion and usurpation won't happen. So I'll be able to focus on one thing. Just like the Golden Flame divinity, I need to investigate how humanity managed to grasp the forging method for the Heaven Sword and Earth Sword in this era. No matter how powerful a weapon is, it's still forged. The same goes for the Heaven Sword. If I can obtain the forging method for the Heaven Sword, I can forge the Heaven Sword myself. Other than that, the origin of the divinities are also a mystery. I need to find out everything I can about the divinities. With that in mind, Gu Qingshan stood up and headed towards the back of the Divine Palace. In front of a large metal gate, she was stopped by 6 divine guards. "Your Divine Majesty, you can't enter this place just yet," the 6 divine guards knelt on the ground and respectfully said. Gu Qingshan narrowed her eyes, her tone became cold and dangerous. "Ah? You dare to stop me?" "It's not like that, Your Divine Majesty, please be a bit patient. You can only enter this place after you receive the Divine King's scepter during the coronation," the leader of the Divine Guards hurriedly explained. This gate had always been guarded by the most loyal Divine Guards, only the Divine King of each generation was allowed to enter. Behind the gate was a record of the divine race's history, many secrets, as well as the corresponding divine techniques created by the divinities of the bygone era in imitation of humanity. Gu Qingshan went silent for a bit. Killing intent erupted from his body. When the divine guards couldn't help but tremble, he suddenly laughed. "Don't worry, I have this much patience." He turned around and left. The 6 divine guards froze, feeling that they couldn't tell what the Divine King was thinking or feeling. They couldn't help but feel anxious. Gu Qingshan returned to the front of the palace and sat down on the Divine King's throne. All of a sudden, a certain thought appeared in his mind, one that he couldn't get rid of no matter how hard he tried. According to the Golden Flame divinity, humanity had always been loyal and had always been under the divine race's surveillance. So humanity couldn't possibly have obtained those 2 swords. Under constant surveillance, Gu Qingshan abruptly stood up. Although the decisive battle had ended, how could the primordial heaven realm's humans and divine race not stay on the front lines to prepare for war? Who knows when the desolate monsters would return? At this point, the news that one of the divinities had died had silently spread. Many people were trying to find out about it. Gu Qingshan recalled another piece of information that divinity reported just now. A great human cultivator had fallen into the desolate world. The divinities didn't dare to rashly enter the desolate world. The divinities thought that those cultivators would be eaten by the desolate monsters. But the situation was actually quite complicated. For example, the Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace's master, Xie Guhong. Xie Guhong went missing at this time, but he managed to return alive. The peak masters of Barren Cloud Heavenly Palace thought that Xie Guhong had fallen into the desolate world. That was why they dared to attack the 3 disciples of the Master Peak. And those peak masters were backed by the divinities. From this, it could be deduced that even the divinities didn't know if Xie Guhong was dead or not. At this point in time, Xie Guhong was invisible, no one could find him. According to the information they received later, he went deep into the desolate world and killed a Saint Power Demon King, raising the morale of humanity. That's right, it was him. Gu Qingshan silently nodded. This was the one and only moment when humanity escaped the divinity's surveillance. Xie Guhong went to the desolate world. Chapter 836. The Grand Divine Palace was located in the sky beyond heaven of the primordial heaven realm. The sky beyond heaven was where all the divinities resided. Each divinity had their own palace, and the height of the sky beyond heaven where their palace was located was used to display their status. And the Grand Divine Palace was located at the highest point of the sky beyond heaven. Humanity didn't know about this. Only the divinities understood each other's status without saying it out loud. The day before the coronation, the god of frost and chill wasn't sitting on the throne of divinity. He stood on top of the grand divine palace, silently observing the sky beyond heaven below, as well as the entire primordial heaven realm. This was the highest point of the primordial heaven realm. Two divinities flew up and hovered below the divine king. They reported, "Your Majesty, humanity has sent an envoy to inquire about the arrangements for the aftermath of the war. Since he already knew everything about the future, this was nothing more than a piece of cake for the divine king." The divine king stayed silent for a bit, then ordered, "Humanity's sects are to select excellent seedlings to come to the divine palace to cultivate and improve their fighting prowess. The divine palaces are to send specialists to teach them. The masters of the divine palaces do not need to personally participate. They must focus on studying the bygone-era humanity's abilities in order to improve their own strength. Although the frontline battle has ceased, do not let your guard down. This year, the divine palaces on duty must reinforce the frontline, supervise the production and construction of large-scale war equipment, select skilled craftsmen, raise their status and treatment, if necessary, reward them in front of humanity. Furthermore, order humanity to send a group of death warriors who are adept at concealment into the desolate world to gather intelligence and information. Do you understand?" "Yes, as the divine king has decreed." The two divinities respectfully retreated. The divine king went silent again and continued to stand on top of the divine palace, observing the entire world. A few moments later, the golden flame divinity flew up from below. He evaluated the divine king. "King of divinities, master of frost and chill, you've impressed me. Could it be that I was an incompetent divine king in history?" The divine king asked. "To be frank, you weren't, but you still couldn't compare to the current you," the golden flame divinity replied. The divine king coldly replied, "If you were like me, knowing full well that you would be killed by an unbeatable enemy, you would have done much better than me." The golden flame divinity thought for a bit, then nodded. He sighed with emotion. Death was indeed the best motivation, and it was no exception for the gods. At this time, a few more divinities flew up and asked the divine king to give them some instructions. The divine king pondered for a moment before spitting out a few words and neatly arranging everything. The divinities listened attentively, and their expressions gradually became more respectful. After the god king finished speaking, they bowed to him and flew away. At this time, the divine king asked, "How's your problem?" The golden flame divinity shook his head. "That strange human killed many desolate soldiers and turned the tide of the battle, then suddenly disappeared. What do you think?" the God King asked. The golden flame divinity's expression was a bit solemn. With the standard of humanity, this person's cultivation is only at void beholder realm, but his swordsmanship has already reached the great achievement realm of sword saint. He continued, "I think he is Gu Qing Shan." The divine king paused and said, "What do you plan to do next?" The golden flame divinity replied, "I suspect that he went to the Wraith realm, or he's hiding in a certain sect. I need more people to investigate this matter." The divine king happily replied, "No problem, I'll send you a few more people. Furthermore, I think you're thinking about the wrong thing. You should start from the clue of elemental lightning. In our era, humanity has never managed to obtain elemental lightning. That makes sense." The golden flame divinity nodded in thought. At this point, the divine king summoned the 5 divinities and ordered them to follow the golden flame divinity's orders. "Alright, you guys go. You must capture that person." After giving his orders, the divine king shook his head emotionally. "Not only did our race suffer the desolate race's humiliation, we even had to suffer the slaughter of humanity in the future. Is our fate truly that difficult?" His expression was calm, his tone was slow, but it caused the divinities to feel a sense of sorrow. The golden flame divinity fell silent. Recalling the past few 10,000 years of history, he couldn't help but sigh. There's no other way, we've never been able to win against the desolate race," the Divine King suddenly shouted. No, since we know the future, we must change it. I will definitely find a way to change our situation. I swear, I will definitely change everything that has already been decided. This world should be ruled by us divinities. His voice resounded across the entire sky beyond heaven. For a while, all the divinities stopped what they were doing and silently listened to the Divine King's roar. "Strength God, come out!" the Divine King ordered again. Following the Divine King's order, a divinity clad in a blinding light flew up from a palace not too far away from the Grand Divine Palace. In front of all the divinities, the Strength God looked up and asked, "God of Frost and Chill, what do you want?" According to the Golden Flame divinity, he was the divinity who was competing against the God of Frost and Chill for the throne. The Divine King stared closely at him and spoke seriously. "So we have been oppressed for far too long, Strength God. Are you willing for our race to remain like this forever? If you, as the ruler, still have to curry favor with the enemy, what do you think the ruler is?" The Strength God looked at the Divine King and said nothing. The Divine King continued, "Strength God, listen carefully. Perhaps I will anger the Lord of Desolation, perhaps I won't even be able to live for 5 years, but I will definitely think of a way to change the fate of our race if I die. You will be the next Divine King." The Strength God trembled and asked, "Is that true?" The Divine King does not lie, but you must promise me that you will not cower or run away. You must follow my path until one day we achieve victory, the Divine King replied. The Strength God's expression slowly changed. He sighed and said, "A path of no return." While saying so, he had already knelt down in the void of space. "Your Divine Majesty, I am willing to follow your path and lead my race to victory, even if what awaits me is death." The Strength God made a solemn vow. The Divine King nodded. "Very well, from today onwards, you and I will no longer need to compete against each other, because we now have the same goal, which is to fight to the death for our race. Indeed, those damned desolate race, I've always wanted to kill them," the Strength God angrily shouted. At this point, divinities slowly flew out from the divine palaces, landed in the void of space below the Divine King, and silently bowed to him. All the divinities had arrived. After bowing to the Divine King, they also bowed to the Strength God. This represented that the divinity race had accepted the Divine King's will and arrangements. They would follow the Divine King's orders and fight. If the Divine King died, they would follow in the Strength God's footsteps and continue to fight. The Golden Flame divinity watched this with a complicated expression on his face. He muttered to himself, knowing his fate, immediately transforming and being reborn, "This is a true Divine King." The figure of light appeared next to him. The figure of light shook his head and sent his voice to the Golden Flame divinity. "But how regretful." The Golden Flame divinity followed up with a sigh. "Indeed, he only exists in a reenactment of that era, unable to influence the true course of history." Looking back at our divine race's several 10,000 years of history, we have always been running away, scheming small tricks, constantly thinking about how to survive. When have we ever thought about fighting against this fate? If he could return to the true course of history and lead the entire divine race forward, our race might truly be able to change the course of fate and create a completely different future. Chapter 837. The Primordial Heaven Realm. The sky beyond heaven. At the top of the Grand Divine Palace, the God of Frost and Chill stood there, looking down at the entire world. He was contemplating without moving. Time slowly passed. Like a statue, he never left. Everyone knew that the new Divine King was contemplating the fate of his entire race. The new Divine King had publicly announced his thoughts. To prevent his will from being unable to continue even if he died in battle, he had even arranged for the next Divine King. The strength god swore in front of all the divinities that he would follow in the footsteps of the god of frost and chill and continue to fight against fate. Just a moment ago, something else happened. The god of frost and chill requested the golden flame divinity from the future to personally crown him during his coronation. This signified that the new divine king would remember everything that happened in the future, as well as all the suffering of the divine race. He swore to change the future fate of the divine race. The golden flame divinity happily agreed. Even though this was only a fragment of history, the golden flame divinity was also very serious for this moment. At this point, the entire divine race had become unprecedentedly united. All the faint thoughts of opposition had been erased. In the hearts of all the divinities, the divine king was unquestionably supported. Somewhere in the void of space. Why, this is clearly only a fragment of history, so why are you so serious? The figure of light asked. Because I can see a different divine race from him. I will witness and inherit the spirit of the divine king, then pass it on to the future, the golden flame divinity replied. All of this is worth it, he added. The figure of light fell silent. I want to leave for a bit, it said. Where are you going? The golden flame divinity asked. During the entire age of old, we had made many preparations. Other than the final preparations against humanity, there was also a certain secret against the desolate race. The figure of light replied. What kind of secret was it? It was most likely some sort of concealment method. Before I saw it, I didn't know what it was, and so, I want to find that secret and return here. The golden flame divinity's expression changed. At this point, the fate of the divine race had changed. This had never happened before in the records of history. Why did you do that? The golden flame divinity solemnly asked. You should be the collective will of the old gods. Why did you give up on exploring humanity's ultimate secret with me? The figure of light replied. Or when the fate of the divine race holds a new hope, I will seek that secret. This was the final promise of the old gods, but I've never heard of such a thing. The golden flame divinity couldn't understand. That's because the divine race has never had hope, so there are some things that won't be triggered, the figure of light replied. Are you tempted now? The golden flame divinity asked. The king of the god race has never stood at the top of the temple and thought about the fate of the entire race for several days in a row. The king of the god race has never sworn to resist the bullying of the desolate antiquity. The king of the god race has never appointed the next king of the god race before his coronation, only because he could die in battle at any time. The figure of light continued. Such a scene has never been seen before in history, so the time has come for me to find that secret. Its voice was full of solemnity as its figure gradually disappeared from the void. The golden flame divinity stayed alone for a long time. He sighed. Who would have thought that my arrival would cause such a hidden change in history? Fortunately, this is only a fragment. After a while of silence, he couldn't help but mutter. Unfortunately, this is only a fragment. Gu Qingshan naturally didn't know about the divinity's discussions and opinions. He stood at the top of the temple, his gaze focused on the void of space. It seemed like he was thinking, but he was actually staring at the war god UI. He was thinking about the meaning of the notifications on the UI. Your personal strength has increased, your card grade has officially increased, Gray card, Sword Cultivator Gu Qingshan grade. Gray card, Max. Companion, Angel of Condemnation Dusk corresponding deck, Fugitive deck. All the information suddenly disappeared. A line of text appeared below the card. You've become a max level gray card, the gray card you possess. Damage amplification. You have a chance to advance. A card with a gray background appeared on the UI. On the front of the card, there was a drawing of a long saber. The edge of the saber flickered with a cold light from time to time. Skill card. Amplify damage. After equipping this card, whenever you deal damage to an enemy, the enemy will take an additional 3% damage. A description. This is a grade passive skill card. Whenever you equip this card in battle, it will continue to function as a gray card. It desires to grow stronger at all times. Now that the chance has arrived, would you like to upgrade it and promote it to lapis grade? Gu Qingshan replied. Upgrade. The gray card continued to spin faster and faster, gradually emitting a jade-colored glow. When the card stopped spinning, it had turned into a pure lapis card. Skill card. Bleed. After equipping this card, whenever you cut an enemy's body with a sharp weapon, the enemy's fillings, such as flesh, steel, mental power, spirit energy, etc., will gradually be drained from the enemy's body. Duration: 10 seconds. A description: this is a lapis grade passive skill card. As long as you place it on the War God UI, it will continue to function. A translucent lapis card slot appeared on the War God UI. Gu Qingshan silently put this card into the slot. A jade green light appeared on the War God UI, giving off a continuous ripple that didn't disappear for a long time. At this point, lines of glowing text appeared on the War God UI. Your first card has become a lapis grade card. You may now obtain a chance to draw another lapis grade card through certain means. After you complete this draw, you will also officially become a lapis grade card. After reading through, Gu Qingshan immediately asked, "System, what means do you mean by certain means?" Silence. The system didn't answer. Gu Qingshan realized and complained. Oi, when I had a lot of soul points, you answered all my questions, but now that I have no soul points, you can't just ignore me like that, can you? The system remained silent. Gu Qingshan helplessly thought for a bit and said, "How about this? You take a step back, I'll also take a step back. I'll owe you soul points for now, I'll give it to you the next time I get more soul points. Just answer my question now. Due to your recent performance, the system has noticed that you're too good at swindling people. The system definitely won't fall for it," the system replied. Gu Qingshan. This War God system. Gu Qingshan gritted her teeth, scowling with an expression of unwillingness and resentment. Without a way, how am I supposed to level up my cards? When Little Dusk escaped from the seal, not only did her cultivation drop, all of her sealing cards were also turned into escape cards. The lapis grade cards that she used, like True Crimson Demon Spear, Combat Golem, Imprisonment Weapon, a Summoning Demon Scorpion Empress. Even from Gu Qingshan's current point of view, they were all very useful cards. The passive skill card that Gu Qingshan had called Bleed was also very powerful, very suitable for sword cultivators. And these were only lapis grade cards. The entire escape card deck also had countless higher grade cards. Then, as long as I keep leveling up, I'll be able to use the escape cards from now on. With that in mind, Gu Qingshan felt a burning desire in her heart again. His expression became one of longing again. The divinities silently observed the Divine King's expression, only to find that the Divine King's expression changed too quickly. The Divine King must be filled with resentment and unwillingness towards the current state of his race. Right, that must be it. Otherwise, why would the Divine King have such a rich expression? What a great Divine King! The divinities silently sighed in their minds. Gu Qingshan didn't seem to notice anything that was happening in the outside world. He decided to stop asking the War God system and instead carefully recalled the conversation he had with Little Dusk. Suddenly, he recalled Little Dusk's explanation. Natural advancement is the slowest, consuming cards is a bit faster. But not every card is suitable, you need to find a card that is compatible with you. Finally, using an inheritance item left behind by the old gods is the fastest way to advance, but those inheritance items are all secrets among secrets, they can't be easily found. Gu Qingshan slowly nodded. Perhaps if I use the first method, I'll be able to directly draw that lapis grade card after advancing again. But now, there's an even faster method. I've become the king of the old gods. It's very simple for me to obtain an inheritance item left behind by a divinity. These items are usually kept in the inheritance vault behind the Grand Divine Palace, and can only be opened with the Divine King's scepter. 3 days later, the coronation ceremony will officially begin, at which point I'll receive the Divine King's scepter. Chapter 838. On the day of the God of Frost and Chill's coronation, the entire sky beyond heaven was sealed off. No humans were allowed to enter. The coronation process was both secret and sacred. No one objected. Everything went smoothly. Following the God of Frost and Chill's request, the Golden Flame divinity personally helped him wear the divine crown. Following that, the 16 divinities cast a secret technique in front of the Grand Divine Palace and called out in unison. After a few dozen seconds of chanting, the Divine King's scepter appeared from the void of space and hovered in front of the God of Frost and Chill. Only on the day of the coronation of a new deity would the Divine King's scepter appear, allowing the new Divine King to use it once. This was a pure white scepter that felt unexpectedly heavy in his hand, as if something was flowing inside. Or as if the scepter was filled with flowing mystical power, giving off the illusion that it was full of something. The God of Frost and Chill raised the Divine King's scepter up high with the crown in his hand. All the divinities praised and blessed him. The new Divine King froze. He looked at the lines of text that appeared on the War God UI frowny face item. Secret storage key grade. Unique item War God skills. None Doomsday Chronicles. None description. This is a special activation key for a normal storage. From the bygone era, Gu Qing-shan took a deep breath, turned around, and headed towards the back of the Grand Divine Palace. He had to head to the inheritance vault to receive the true inheritance of the divine race, then return to the Grand Divine Palace to announce to all the divinities that he had learned the fundamental secret of his race and was willing to protect the divine race. At that point, the coronation process would be perfectly concluded, and he would truly become the Divine King. Gu Qing-shan walked along the long hallway of the Grand Divine Palace until he reached the entrance of the inheritance vault. This was a large metal door with countless complicated runes engraved on it, so much so that even a single glance at it would cause one's soul vessel to suffer a minor impact. Any attack on the metal door would activate the countermeasures on the door. The attacker's soul vessel attack would directly destroy their consciousness and turn them into a fool. 16 fully armored divine guards stood in front of the giant metal door. According to the established procedure, Gu Qing-shan walked in front of them and asked in a loud voice, "Loyal guards of the God Clan, servants who have been guarding the secret from birth to death, why have you stopped me from exploring the secret?" The 16 divine guards spoke in unison. "If you are not the Divine King, please leave immediately, because you do not have the qualifications to learn the fundamental secret of the divine race at this time." Gu Qing-shan showed the God King's scepter to the 16 divine guardians. When the divine guards saw the God King's scepter, they respectfully saluted the new God King and retreated to the two sides of the treasury door, making way for the new God King. Gu Qing-shan strode in front of the metal door. As if sensing the arrival of the God King's scepter, all the runes on the metal door lit up. They formed a rotating vortex around the center of the metal door. Gu Qing-shan raised the Divine King's scepter and thrust it into the black hole in the middle of all the runes. Instantly, a beam of light shone down from the metal door and illuminated Gu Qing-shan's body. His entire body disappeared from the metal door. A second later, he appeared inside the inheritance treasury. The God King's scepter also passed through the metal door and silently hovered in front of him. Gu Qing-shan began to observe his surroundings. The entire floor of the inheritance treasury was made from the same material as the metal door. The treasury was about a few hundred square meters in size, but it was completely empty without a single thing. Gu Qing-shan was stunned for a while. Nothing appeared. Nothing happened. The previous Divine King died so suddenly that he didn't have the time to teach him anything. Or rather, even if the previous Divine King was still alive, he wouldn't have told Gu Qing-shan how to use the treasury. Gu Qingshan thought for a bit, then grabbed the Divine King's scepter that was hovering in the air. Instantly, the Divine King's scepter gave off a blinding light. A cold voice resounded from the Divine King's scepter. Frowny face, I have sensed the existence of the warehouse, please allow me to contact the host. Host, Gu Qingshan glanced at the metal floor. Sensing the light from the scepter, countless runes began to manifest on the floor. Gu Qingshan pondered and lightly tapped the scepter on the metal floor. As soon as the Divine King's scepter touched the floor, layers upon layers of metal rose up from the ground, tightly embedding the scepter inside. The cold voice resounded again. Frowny face, you have the authority to take away a storage item. The authority is determined to be random. You have the authority to read the storage image of this warehouse. Please choose between taking away the storage item or reading the storage image. According to the authority, you may only choose one of the options. Gu Qingshan was stunned. I can only choose one between the storage item and the secret of the inheritance? This means that I either have to take away a storage item to upgrade my card, or I'll only be able to read the storage image of a storage image. Once I upgrade my card and obtain a second lapis grade card, I'll also become a lapis grade card. Lapis grade cards aren't as low as gray cards. Little Dusk had also once fallen to the level of a lapis grade card, but Gu Qingshan has seen her in battle. A card of this level already has a lot of functions, so as long as Gu Qingshan successfully advances, she'll be able to slowly construct her own lapis grade card deck. But what exactly is that storage image? Could it be the divine race's most fundamental secret? But then again, who cares about the secret? I'll fight against the divine race sooner or later and destroy them all. So I can choose not to know the secret. But what if that storage image is some sort of important information? Gu Qingshan scowled, still a bit unwilling. Very rarely, he was hesitating. After careful consideration, Gu Qingshan still chose the storage image. Once his coronation ended, the Divine King's scepter would disappear until the next king ascended the throne, then it would reappear. Upgrading my card can happen sooner or later. But secrets can't be obtained at any time. Let's choose the storage image. That was Gu Qingshan's decision. As he was about to say something, a line of glowing text appeared on the War God UI. If you don't want to regret this, please place both hands on the scepter. Gu Qingshan was surprised, then realized something. He immediately placed both hands on the Divine King's scepter. The War God System's voice came. Remember, you owe me a sum of soul points. This sum came from my accumulation over a long period of time. How much? Gu Qingshan asked. When you have enough soul points, I will tell you, the system replied. As soon as it said so, the Divine King's scepter began to shake. Countless glowing runes began to appear on the metal floor. Lines of glowing text appeared on the War God UI. Frowny face, currently deconstructing the warehouse's runes. Obtained the rune keys construction method in accordance with the warehouse's lowest threshold of warning and kill line, recreating the scepter's runes and defining this time's authorization. Authorization has been changed. This time's authorization has been confirmed. Obtain a storage image, as well as the most valuable item in the warehouse. All the notifications disappeared. Inside the inheritance vault, countless sprites of light appeared from the ground and formed a screen in the air. A man appeared on the screen. He spoke. Regardless, we're all going to leave. I'll leave these personal combat soul artifacts behind. After all, bringing too many useless things to the other side is a burden. He stepped aside on the screen. Behind this man, numerous balls of light were silently hovering in the air. The man proudly explained. These are my personal experiments, a combination of magic and technology, as well as a bit of chaos element. Although they aren't very useful, there's still an interesting research direction. The only thing I need to keep in mind is that these things probably have an expiration date. I can't bring them to the other side of the door. He lightly tapped one of the balls of light. The ball of light turned into a miniature humanoid creature that gave off light. Chapter 839. Gu Qingshan almost couldn't help but exclaim as she looked at the miniature humanoid creature with a glowing flame between its eyebrows. Isn't this a miniature divinity? Or to use the man's words, this is a personal combat soul artifact with an expiration date. Countless flickering sprites of light formed an image that continued to display the recorded events in front of Gu Qingshan. The man continued to narrate. As a soul artifact, I used the perpetual motion mode of technology to drive the power of magic, then creatively used the element of chaos to cause the power of magic to change. Specifically, it was to give this soul artifact the power to break the laws. The man lightly tapped the miniature divinity's body. Watch closely, this is something that no one else has successfully researched. It's very interesting. Following his narration, the miniature divinity opened its eyes. The miniature divinity's expression froze, its tone of voice was completely devoid of emotion. I am the fire spirit giver, do you wish to fight? The man replied. The battle is about to begin, please grant me the power of fire spirit. The miniature divinity flew behind the man and reached both hands towards him. Ho! The man's entire body was engulfed in flames. He casually took out a submachine gun, half explaining and half muttering. I myself have the power of wind spirit, and this personal combat soul artifact will grant me the awakening of a second type of spirit ability to increase my personal combat prowess. He pulled the trigger. Ta-ta-ta, ta-ta-ta. The submachine gun fired flaming bullets one after another. A few dozen meters away from the man, several targets were hit by the bullets and were cut into pieces, each of which was quickly devoured by the flames and turned to ash in no time at all. A technological firearm that has both the cutting power of wind spirit, as well as the burning and destructive power of fire spirit. I personally find this weapon creation to be very interesting, the man triumphantly declared. He put the submachine gun away and took out a sharp dagger. Lightly swinging the dagger, an arc of flame shot out from the dagger and struck a target not too far away. Sha! The target was cut in half, then quickly devoured by the flames. Wind and fire perfectly fused. Gu Qingshan also couldn't help but feel a bit surprised. For a person to possess two types of psionic powers at the same time, just as that person had said, this power had already broken the shackles of the natural laws. It would have been fine if that was all. But that was not all. The man tapped the miniature deity's body. The miniature deity immediately turned back into a ball of light and returned to the group of balls of light. The man continued, actually, apart from magical powers, I've also tried to incorporate powers from various directions, such as mystical, barbaric, technological, evil, ethereal, and so on. In short, I've created many combinations of powers that I've never seen before. The man said. He stretched out his hand and tapped on another ball of light. The ball of light immediately scattered into specks of light, completely entering that person's body. This solo combat soul armament is different from the previous one. It contains the power of the barbarian, but I've been unable to absorb its power, so I've bestowed it with the power of the mystic, and finally succeeded. The man said slowly. With a light leap, he jumped into the air. Suddenly, his entire form began to change. Boom! A pair of gigantic feet landed on the ground, causing the ground to tremble and rumble. Dark gray tough skin, a body made entirely from a type of glowing rock, an intense killing intent drifted around his body. This was a 6-meter-tall glowing rock giant. Comet let out a voice that caused the space around it to tremble. From the void of space, a total of 10 different types of psionic powers manifested. Gold, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, light, dark, sound. They fused together to form a powerful spell that seemed capable of piercing through the void of space itself. Boom! 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 The colorful spells struck the glowing rock giant's body. The giant didn't budge at all. It wasn't until all the spells disappeared that it began to speak with a thunderous voice. As everyone knows, the indestructible giant is a very famous type of wondrous creature. Its body is very difficult to be destroyed by physical attacks, and all magical powers are unable to affect it. And now, I've used the solo combat soul armament to obtain its power. The rock giant clenched its fist and prepared to strike the ground. It suddenly stopped. Ahaha, I almost forgot myself. This warehouse wouldn't be able to withstand the combined power of the indestructible giant, and I, the glowing rock giant, slowly shrank and turned back into the man from before. Sprites of light began to radiate from his body, gathered together, and once again manifested as a cluster of light. The man scowled and pondered. The power of the void isn't easy to manifest, so I only managed to capture a single type of void power and made it into a solo combat soul armament. He then grabbed a twisted cluster of green light and crushed it. An invisible flow of air began to radiate from his body. Following that, black cracks began to appear and disappear around him. The man casually rolled up a small ball of paper and tossed it into the black crack next to him. A simple defensive soul armament, the man explained. When something comes into contact with a crack in space, it will be randomly tossed to a random location. Even I don't know where it will end up. Seemingly recalling something, he lowered his voice. I don't have time to do long-term durability testing, so I can't report this for now. How regretful. Alright, that's about it. I'll be leaving now. I'll leave these things here after all. This place has already been constructed, and there's nothing left to explore. We've made all the necessary preparations. The ordinary people that remain here will be protected by the various measures we've left behind. It will also serve as a backup base for us to escape. Goodbye. I hope someone will be able to discover my great invention. The screen of light faded. Gu Qingshan waited for a few breaths worth of time. The screen of light once again converged to form another image. A divinity with a burning flame above his head faced the image and began to narrate his story. I don't know which leader of the divine race you are, but the secret I'm going to tell you right now is something that only you can know. Do not tell anyone else, lest the desolate race find out. The humans have entered the gate of the desolate world to explore the mysteries within, leaving behind only the old and weak here to recuperate. Oh, but one day, the desolate monsters that they were feeding suddenly betrayed them. Or humanity is a very smart and powerful race, so I'm guessing that the desolate monsters didn't dare to go against humanity at all, only willing to obediently serve as their pets. What kind of power was it that caused the desolate race to change so drastically? This is still a mystery, but I once faintly discovered a certain secret. In the past, a strange voice once resounded from the gate of the world. The desolate monsters seemed to have received some sort of information that allowed them to betray humanity. I'm guessing that humanity is already dead, otherwise they would have at least sent some sort of message back to us. Because of that, as the leader of the divine race, what you need to do is to find a way to enter the gate of the world and search for the things that the powerful humans left behind after their deaths, because our divine race has two fatal weaknesses. Firstly, our strength is fixed, unable to increase. Secondly, only when two of us die will a new divinity be born. If this continues, we will eventually go extinct. Only by searching for the technology of humanity will we be able to change our foundations. We must find a way to obtain the method to enter the gate of the world from the desolate monsters. Chapter 840. The Divine King's voice disappeared. All the images turned into sprites of light and slowly faded away. Only a glowing piece of paper fell into Gu Qingshan's hand. What was written on it was, 2 divinities died, 1 divinity was born, 7 days apart. Pop! A few moments later, the piece of paper also scattered into sprites of light and disappeared into the void of space. Gu Qingshan fell into thought. Fortunately, the death of 2 divinities meant that the birth of a new divinity had yet to be discovered by entities other than the Divine King. So no one would know that in Cold Jade Forest, other than the Lord of Desolation, he also killed a divinity. However, the Golden Flame divinity came from the future. Perhaps he knows this secret. As soon as a new divinity was born, he would definitely realize it. I have to think of a way. Gu Qingshan stood still for a long time until he was startled by a certain sound from the warehouse. A stone pillar carved with various complicated runes rose from the ground. The stone pillar scattered into small pieces of rock that floated around in the void of space. A square stone slowly rotated at the center of the rock. The frigid voice from the Divine King's scepter sounded again. Frowny face, new Divine King, you may now receive the item. Gu Qingshan looked at the stone, a bit curious. The war god Yui altered the authority so that I can receive the most precious item in this warehouse. Which means this square stone is the most precious item. After a bit of thought, Gu Qingshan put his hand on the rotating square stone. In an instant, the square stone disappeared without a trace. Gu Qingshan sensed it for a bit. Nothing at all. He couldn't help but ask, System, where did that square stone from before go? Ting. The war god Yui replied, this item is useless to you. This is an information collection stone from the bygone era, containing a large amount of information from the bygone era. Through this item, the Doomsday Chronicles will be upgraded. Gu Qingshan asked. Indeed, your Doomsday Chronicles will be able to record information from the bygone era through this stone. From now on, whenever you come across any ancient items, you will be able to clearly recognize their usage and information, the system replied. Following the war god Yui's explanation, the Doomsday Chronicles icon at the bottom of the UI became blurry. It seems to be undergoing some sort of change. A few moments later, the icon changed and turned into a thick green book. The words Doomsday Chronicles disappeared. New words appeared below the icon, evolving. Gu Qingshan remained unmoved. He took a deep breath and asked, in other words, you took that thing, and I didn't get any benefits, right? Noticing the subtle change in Gu Qingshan's tone, the system immediately said, No, I left some for you. As she spoke, a small piece of gravel appeared in Gu Qingshan's hand. It looked like a piece of scrap from a square stone. Gu Qingshan looked at the gravel and couldn't help but ask, What use does this thing have to me? You can use it to evolve your card level, the system said. Gu Qingshan brought up her card interface and looked at it. Yes, he was a gray card now. He had to advance quickly. The power of the card was still very strong, and it was a very good aid in battle. He tried putting the gravel on the card UI. The gravel slowly sank into the card UI and disappeared. The entire UI began to shake. Under this shaking, the gray card that depicted Gu Qingshan wielding a sword with both hands broke into many pieces and fell into the UI. Following that, a new card replaced it. This was a lapis card. Gu Qingshan found that he was still standing on the card, wielding a sword with both hands. However, the card didn't seem as gloomy as before, finally giving off a sense of realism. Lines of glowing text appeared on the war god UI. Frowny face, you've become a lapis card. You may now draw a second lapis card. From now on, you may use lapis cards to fight. The lines of glowing text all disappeared. Following that, 3 lapis cards appeared on the UI. Their backs were facing upwards, making it so that Gu Qingshan couldn't see what was depicted on the front of the cards. Because of that, Gu Qingshan couldn't determine what kind of function each of the cards had. A notification popped up below the 3 cards. Please draw a lapis card as your second combat card. Gu Qingshan glanced at the 3 cards. In truth, no matter which lapis card it was, they all had their own unique functions that could be used in certain situations. So there's nothing to think about, I can just draw them, I'll be able to use them anyway. Gu Qingshan casually pointed at the lapis card in the middle. Sensing Gu Qingshan's action, the card flipped over. This card gave off a blinding crimson glow that completely obscured the thing depicted on the card. Gu Qingshan sighed, feeling very pleased with his luck. Indeed, this was an extremely unique weapon. The notifications that quickly appeared on the war god UI confirmed his suspicions. Rare item. True Crimson Demon Spear. Equipping this demon spear will prevent the user from equipping any armor. This demon spear has the law property: absolute sharpness. Description: this was the first weapon created by the old gods to be able to harm themselves. Nothing can stop it. As Gu Qingshan held this card in her hand, the other two cards disappeared into the void of space. A few moments later, a spear enveloped in an endless crimson glow appeared from the void of space, and was held in Gu Qingshan's hand. Staring at this spear that had the absolute sharpness property, Gu Qingshan suddenly understood something. No wonder the old gods would create so many things that were more powerful than themselves. They would always imitate the things of the bygone era humans. The bygone era humans were incredibly powerful, so the things they created through imitation would naturally be much more powerful than the old gods themselves. The simplest example was this true Crimson Demon Spear. Gu Qingshan casually swung the spear. Sisisisisi. The sound of air being torn apart could be heard clearly. Gu Qingshan muttered, "How unfortunate that it's a spear. It would be even better if it was a flying sword." As soon as he said that, a line of glowing green text appeared on the War God UI inside the green book that was currently evolving. Frowny face. This item is an imitation, but it already contains a certain crucial element. If you need a sword, you can collect that element from this card and use it as one of the necessary elements to create a sword. Gu Qingshan's eyes glowed as he read this. The true Crimson Demon Spear is capable of killing even a deity. If I have a similarly sharp flying sword, a lot of my battles would become much easier. However, this isn't something that can be completed in a short amount of time, so I'll have to do it slowly. Gu Qingshan silently kept this in mind. He let go of the true Crimson Demon Spear, allowing it to turn back into a lapis-colored card and return to his card UI. At this point, he had become a lapis-grade card, as well as two lapis-grade cards, the passive skill Bleed and the rare weapon True Crimson Demon Spear. The Divine King's scepter lightly floated up from the ground and disappeared into the void of space. It had completed its mission this time. Gu Qingshan felt an immense force pushing him forward. A second later, he was already outside the warehouse. As the 16 divine guards saw him, they all knelt down on one knee to greet him. After holding the coronation ceremony and entering the inheritance vault, from this moment onwards, Gu Qingshan had truly become the Divine King. Looking at the divine guards, he didn't really know how to view these human-manufactured goods. Gu Qingshan had pretty much guessed the entire situation. The current divine race all had their own sentience, which was most likely due to them having passed their expiration date. To not be wiped out, their only hope was to enter the gate of the desolate world. To enter the gate, the divine race and the desolate monsters made an agreement. The divine race would help the desolate monsters deceive humanity, turning humanity into the monsters' food, as well as help the desolate monsters destroy all of the order left behind by humanity. If the divine race managed to do this, the desolate monsters would have to pay the price of helping the divine race enter the gate. This was the agreement between the two races. Only humanity was deceived by the divine race and forced to fight against the desolate monsters, only to be eaten by them. What a tragic fate this was! Gu Qingshan silently shook his head and slowly returned to the front hall. He sat down on the Divine King's throne and silently thought about this. The golden flame divinity appeared in front of him. "Did you find that person?" Gu Qingshan asked in a low voice. "No, he suddenly disappeared. I don't know where he went," the golden flame divinity worriedly replied. "I'm guessing that person also realized that he attracted too much attention at the front lines, so he went into hiding. That's why you won't be able to find him for now. It's best if you don't go on a large-scale search for him right now. Once he feels that the commotion has died down, he'll naturally reappear," Gu Qingshan replied. That makes sense. Perhaps we really did push him too hard and scared him." The golden flame divinity slowly nodded. All of a sudden, a loud commotion came from outside the divine palace, drawing their attention. What's going on? This is the Grand Divine Palace, why is it so noisy? Gu Qingshan scowled and shouted. A divinity flew in from outside the palace, knelt down in front of Gu Qingshan from afar and reported, "Your Majesty, we have captured that person captured." Gu Qingshan and the Golden Flame divinity spoke at the same time. The divinity continued to report. Indeed, she was hiding among humanity, wandering everywhere to gather information. Finally, she was exposed, so we set up a trap and successfully captured her. While they were talking, two divinities escorted a woman into the divine palace. Chapter 841. Gu Qingshan sat on the divine throne with a cold expression. Faint killing intent was exuding from his body. "Is this the person who massacred our divine race in the future?" he asked. "No, it's not her." The Golden Flame divinity appeared very disappointed. Gu Qingshan was surprised. Seeing that, the two divinities hurriedly explained to the Golden Flame divinity, "We used the method you taught us to investigate humanity and found this woman to be very suspicious. She was constantly going to the sects of various sects, as if she was looking for some sort of information, so we captured her." The Golden Flame divinity sighed. "Seems like she's also here to look for that person." The Golden Flame divinity was a bit dispirited and continued, "This person is completely useless, let's just kill her." Gu Qingshan glanced at Luo Bingli and said, "It's too early to say anything, perhaps we can use this woman as bait to lure that person out." "It's useless." The Golden Flame divinity shook his head. "These humans hiding in the future, as soon as they realize what you're trying to use them for, they'll immediately commit suicide." Gu Qingshan displayed a cruel smile and slowly said, "Commit suicide? This divine king is here, and she still wants to commit suicide?" Hearing that, Luo Bingli's expression became resolute. Before she was captured, she used a unique method to find Gu Qingshan's location, which was why she came to this world to look for Gu Qingshan. But even after several days of searching through the major sects of humanity, she still couldn't find a single trace of Gu Qingshan. Even when she was captured, she still wanted to come to the sky beyond heaven to see if Gu Qingshan was here. She still couldn't find Gu Qingshan here. And now, it's time for my life to end. As long as I use a unique method to burn my soul, even a divinity wouldn't be able to obtain any useful information from me. This way, Gu Qingshan would be safe, and humanity's secret would be preserved. With that in mind, Luo Bingli was about to act. All of a sudden, an inner sight resounded in her mind. "It's me. Don't die." Luo Bingli was stunned. This was clearly Gu Qingshan's spirit sense, Gu Qingshan's voice. But where was he? Luo Bingli forced herself to remain calm and quickly observed the entire Divine King Palace. That daring fellow was actually hiding here. As the saying goes, the most dangerous place is also the safest place. But this place was too dangerous. Not only was there the Golden Flame God, but there was also the new Divine King, the God of Frost and Chill. Where is Gu Qingshan hiding? Luo Bingli widened her beautiful eyes and looked around. Nothing. Only the God of Frost and Chill, who was sitting on the Divine King's throne, snorted and said viciously, "I'll seal her completely with the Arctic frost and torture her every day. Let's see if that person will come to save her." The Golden Flame divinity shook his head. "It's useless, she will definitely burn her life soul and erase everything about herself." He glanced at Luo Bingli in confusion. Earlier, he followed the figure of light to several phantom images and captured several human cultivators who were hiding within them. Those human cultivators all ended their lives this way. Why isn't this woman doing anything yet? It wasn't just the Golden Flame divinity who was confused, even Luo Bingli was confused. That guy really is something. He was clearly hiding inside the Divine King Palace, but not only did I not find him, neither did the Divine King nor the Golden Flame divinity notice him. Where exactly is he hiding? At this point, Luo Bingli noticed that frost was quickly condensing beneath her feet and spreading to her entire body. Not good. The Divine King is attacking me. They imprison me to lure Gu Qingshan out. I can't let that happen. Luo Bingli once again activated the secret art of death. Immense spirit energy fluctuations began to radiate from her body. At this point, Gu Qingshan's inner sight came again. Hey, what are you doing? Don't die, I'm confident I can save you, he hurriedly sent his voice. This time, Luo Bingli carefully followed the direction of the inner sight and carefully sensed her surroundings. Luo Bingli suddenly noticed something. Something that she couldn't believe. She abruptly turned to the Divine King's throne, to the newly appointed Divine King. The god of frost and chill was leaning on his throne, manipulating the frost in the void of space with one hand. The boundless frost had completely frozen Luo Bingli's knees and was continuing to spread towards her waist. The Divine King smirked triumphantly. See, she still hasn't killed herself. I knew that not every human cultivator had the courage to die. The golden flame divinity went silent for a bit, then replied, That would be for the best. I hope we'll be able to lure him out. The Divine King clenched his fist tightly. Indeed, when the time comes, we'll definitely be able to capture that person you spoke of, the golden flame divinity nodded. The frost continued to spread towards Luo Bingli's body. Half of her body had already been sealed by the frost. But she didn't have the time to care about that. She had to do everything in her power to maintain the expression of despair on her face. You! Luo Bingli tried sending her voice to the Divine King. It's me, prove it to me. The spirit tortoise let me enter the phantom images. Xiegu Hong was my Shifu. You told me to take a desolate coin and told me that the coin could be used against divinities. Then the divine race and the desolate monsters attacked the barren cloud heaven's grotto together. You and I escaped from that phantom image. Gu Qingshan quickly sent her voice. I understand, but how did you become the Divine King? Luo Bingli was still in disbelief. I've learned how to perform. What's a performance? Let's not talk about that for now. Since you were able to find me in so many phantom images, you must have made the appropriate preparations. What should we do now? Luo Bingli immediately replied, Leave this phantom image. How do we do that? Gu Qingshan asked. Luo Bingli replied, We need to gather a lot of materials in order to create a jade disc that leads to another hidden phantom image. Gu Qingshan sighed in relief. So the human race also had something up their sleeves. That's good, let me think about it. The two of them spoke very quickly and finished explaining everything in just a few breaths' worth of time. The other divinities were still observing the Divine King's display of power and Frost's divine craft. Gu Qingshan quickly thought about it. Another breath's worth of time later, he sent his voice, How about we do this? As the frost slowly reached Luo Bingli's neck, she suddenly burst into tears. I surrender, I don't want to die. The Divine King's expression changed a bit and stopped the frost from forming. Human girl, tell me all of your secrets, or I'll make you suffer the pain of eternal frost, the Divine King declared. Luo Bingli was about to speak. Wait! The golden flame divinity stopped her. What is it? Why are you stopping me from asking for information? The Divine King scowled. I think we need the God of Lies to be present, the golden flame divinity replied. The God of Lies had a unique ability, which was that no entity could lie in front of him. The Divine King paused briefly, then slowly spoke. You're right, call the God of Lies here. Understood. A divinity left with the order. A few moments later, the God of Lies arrived at the Divine Palace. The golden flame divinity then turned to Luo Bingli and spoke with a serious tone. Very well, you may speak, but you must be careful. As long as you lie to us, the Divine King will make you suffer the pain of eternal frost for 10,000 years. If everything I say is true, will the Divine King spare my life? Luo Bingli asked. Of course, as long as everything you say is true, this king will guarantee your safety, Gu Qingshan replied. But Luo Bingli hesitantly looked at the golden flame divinity. The golden flame divinity avoided her gaze and spoke. No need to look at me, the divine king's will is the will of the entire divine race. Hurry up and speak, he shouted. Luo Bingley replied. I have a unique jade disc that can sense the location of any human who enters the phantom images, so I also came here. What do you plan to do after you find him? The divine king asked. Luo Bingley looked at the divine king and slowly spoke. I want to tell him to not follow the previous secret sequence to enter the next phantom image, or even the phantom image after that. Why? The divine king asked. Because after the phantom image I was in was destroyed, I used a unique method to investigate it and found that the subsequent phantom images were all tampered with, Luo Bingley replied. He won't know about this. Continue, the golden flame divinity coldly said. Luo Bingley continued. I want to create a jade disc with him to avoid those secret phantom images and travel to another hidden phantom image. The golden flame divinity was shocked. So humanity still had something up their sleeve. Within the hidden phantom images, there must be a path that leads to the true final world of the age of old. In that final true world, humanity hid a flying sword that could kill divinities. I can't let Gu Qingshan enter that phantom image. The golden flame divinity shouted. How do I create that jade disc? Luo Bingley replied. I must wait until all the materials are gathered before the seal in my thought sea is undone. Only then will I understand the method to create that jade disc. What materials do you need? The divine king asked. Luo Bingley listed a bunch of rare smithing materials. The divine king and golden flame divinity both looked at the god of lies. The god of lies nodded. She isn't lying. The divine king waved his hand. Countless strands of frost manifested from the void of space around Luo Bingley and completely froze her. What are you doing? The golden flame divinity asked. Sealing her here, the divine king stood up and casually said, I'll send a large number of people to seal this place. That person you spoke of won't be able to get close, and won't be able to learn the method to create the jade disc. The golden flame divinity pondered. During this time, how about we gather the materials in preparation for creating the jade disc? Correct. The divine king looked at the golden flame divinity and spoke in a low voice. Once we obtain the method to create the jade disc, we'll kill this human girl. The golden flame divinity muttered. This way, both the materials for the jade disc and the method to create it will be in our hands. That person will no longer have a chance. Indeed, that person is no longer important. The true future lies in this king's hands, the divine king replied. The golden flame divinity thought about it a few times and found that this was the best solution. The original path had already been cut off. Gu Qingshan definitely wouldn't be able to go through those secret phantom images and arrive at the moment when humanity buried the heaven sword. And the new path lies in my and the divine king's hands. Chapter 842. The Primordial World. The Sky Beyond Heaven. The divinities were busy. Luo Bingley listed a total of several hundred precious materials, some of which were extremely hard to find even in the primordial heaven realm. The divinities couldn't help but go out on a large scale to search for precious smithing materials. Even the golden flame divinity was asked by the divine king to participate in this matter. The grand divine palace. The divine king was sitting on his throne. In the middle of the empty palace was a large ice crystal. Luo Bingley was frozen inside. I didn't think you would order the divinities to collect these materials. If that's the case, the seal in my thought sea will soon be undone, Luo Bingley said. Indeed, but before that, I'll have to trouble you to stay inside the ice crystal, Gu Qingshan said apologetically. Luo Bingley was thinking about something else. That god of lies, it's true. Once he uses that ability, no one can lie in front of him, then you. He wouldn't dare to use that ability against the divine king unless he wants to die, Gu Qingshan casually replied. Luo Bingley sighed in relief. Gu Qingshan asked, Could it be you're just a split soul like my Shifu? No, I'm complete. I've been hiding in the phantom images all this time. I haven't died, Luo Bingley replied. She explained further. Among all the phantom images, I'm the only one who has a complete body and soul. Why is that? Gu Qingshan asked. I'm the strongest cultivator in the path of music. My soul vessel is also the strongest. In a one-on-one fight, I'm not afraid of divinities or normal desolate monsters. Everyone decided to let me live to ensure that nothing goes wrong in the phantom images, Luo Bingley replied. Humanity's final plan was still discovered by the divinities, Gu Qingshan sighed. That's right, but we really did prepare another path. To ensure that this path wouldn't be discovered, it was sealed inside my thought sea. Even I don't know its details, Luo Bingley replied. She looked at Gu Qingshan and resolutely declared, Once the seal is undone, I will immediately send my inner sight to tell you the path. Then I will burn my soul and die without revealing this path to the golden flame divinity. You're afraid of him? Gu Qingshan asked. It's not that I'm afraid, but I can tell that his desire to obtain the final secret of humanity is far greater than his desire to capture and kill you, Luo Bingley said. Gu Qingshan stayed silent for a bit, then said, Don't die, Luo Bingley replied. I must die. I will make it seem as if I've triggered the seal and died. That way, the divinities won't suspect that you know that secret, Gu Qingshan resolutely said. That won't do, I'll think of something else. Luo Bingley shook her head. From the very beginning, every single one of us had already prepared ourselves for death. Countless comrades have sacrificed themselves for this secret. I will also use my death to ensure that this secret is never revealed. You don't need to worry. Seeing her determination to die, Gu Qingshan was a bit moved. He spoke in a low voice. At a time like this, you can't die. Why? Luo Bingley asked. When the first path was destroyed by the divinities, it was already clear where humanity's problems lie, Gu Qingshan replied. Luo Bingley was attracted by his words and asked, What problems do humanity have? Underestimating the enemy, Gu Qingshan slowly spoke. You need to understand one thing, the divinities aren't that easy to deal with. If they were able to create even the samsara, they must still have a lot more tricks up their sleeves. He then appeared a bit self-deprecating. Why do I always stay in the grand divine palace, sitting on this throne without moving? It's because I know too little about the divinities, so I can't leave the divine palace to do anything else, otherwise I'll easily give myself away in front of the other divinities. Aside from the divinities, the desolate monsters are even harder to deal with. The Lord of Desolation already knew everything about the divinities, so he didn't reveal anything until he suddenly killed the Divine King. The Lord of Desolation is extremely wary of humanity. I'm guessing that his understanding of humanity might even be above that of the divinities. Luo Bingley was stunned for a bit, then looked at Gu Qingshan and asked, You don't have confidence? Gu Qingshan replied, Of course not. Why not? Luo Bingley asked. Gu Qingshan replied, Confidence is built on the foundation of knowing yourself and your enemy. I don't even know how many unimaginable things the divinities have done by imitating humanity, nor do I know how powerful the desolate race is, nor do I know what kind of secrets and goals they're planning to use against humanity, he helplessly replied. I don't know anything, and I don't have any reliable sources of information. What do you think my chances of winning are? Luo Bingley went silent for a bit. She struggled to speak. If the situation is so dire, I should use my death to exchange for humanity's secrets. No, I'll do it. You need to survive and help me, Gu Qingshan replied. Help you? That's right. Do you really think that I alone would be able to win against two powerful and well-prepared races? Luo Bingley was speechless. That's right, what the entire age of old humanity couldn't do. What makes you think that I can do it by myself? Gu Qingshan seemed to have recalled something and sighed. My friends all have outstanding talents and incredible potential, but they still need a bit more time to grow, so I'm fighting alone right now. That's why I'm asking you not to die. Help me. Luo Bingley silently listened to her and hesitated for a while before speaking. If I survive, the secret might be exposed, Gu Qingshan scoffed. Using death to protect secrets? This has always been the only strategy of idiots. Luo Bingley glared at him. Gu Qingshan hurriedly corrected herself. Truthfully, from my experience, only by staying alive will we have a chance to change everything. Luo Bingley pondered. I'm willing to help you, but if I survive, I'll expose humanity's final secret. I guarantee that won't happen, Gu Qingshan emphasized each word. If that's the case, I'm willing to help you. But if it comes to a point where I must die, please don't stop me, Luo Bingley said. That's a promise, Gu Qingshan replied. At this point, a voice came from outside the palace. Your Divine Majesty, in accordance with your will, the materials have been gathered. Gu Qingshan and Luo Bingley's expressions changed at the same time. Once the materials to create the jade disc are gathered, the seal on Luo Bingley's Thoughtsea will be undone. The final secret of humanity will be revealed to the divinities. Luo Bingley asked, "What's your plan?" "They're about to force me to reveal the method to create the jade disc." Gu Qingshan sat there with a worried and contemplative expression. Seeing his expression, Luo Bingley's heart slowly sank. She slowly asked, "Is there really no other way? Then I'll stick to my previous plan. Once all the materials appear in front of me, I'll use my inner sight to transmit the secret to you, then I'll burn my own soul and die." No, Gu Qingshan regained her senses and replied, "I'm not worried about the current situation." "Then what are you worried about?" Luo Bingley asked in surprise. Gu Qingshan sighed and muttered, "Even now, the desolate race still hasn't made a single move. That shouldn't be the case." "You mean, the Lord of Desolation is even harder to deal with than the divinities, but he didn't come to steal this secret. This is outside of my expectations." Gu Qingshan continued muttering, "I've made a lot of preparations, but the desolate race still hasn't come. This is the situation I don't want to see the most, because it proves that the situation is still under their control. I'll have to find another way to solve this situation." Gu Qingshan lowered her eyes, seemingly falling into some sort of deep contemplation. Seeing Gu Qingshan's contemplative expression, Luo Bingley was a bit stunned. This person, the current situation doesn't even enter his eyes, nor is it within the scope of his consideration. What he's thinking is how to deal with an enemy that's even more terrifying and hidden. What kind of person is this? With that in mind, Luo Bingley suddenly felt a glimmer of hope. In the countless days of darkness and despair, this was the first time she felt hope. Perhaps, she suddenly had a thought. Perhaps even she didn't realize it, but from start to finish, she didn't believe that humanity's secret and plan would succeed. It was only to fight against despair that she lied to herself, telling herself that as long as she waited, there would be hope. Chapter 843. Perhaps Gu Qingshan had been contemplating for a bit too long. Outside the Grand Divine Palace, the golden flame divinity's voice slowly resounded. "The materials needed to forge the jade disc have been gathered, awaiting your orders, Your Majesty." The Divine King Gu Qingshan regained his senses. He looked at the frozen Luo Bingley. Luo Bingley opened her eyes wide, met his gaze, and showed a questioning look. "Just listen, he can't wait to find out the Heaven Sword's secret," she sent her voice. "It's fine, I'll take care of it," Gu Qingshan replied. He clapped his hands. Behind the Grand Divine Palace, 12 of the 16 divine guards guarding the inheritance flew into the palace and knelt down on one knee. These divine guards were responsible for guarding the inheritance, so after the Divine King's ascension, they would also listen to his orders. "Divine King, you summoned us?" the leader of the Divine Guards asked. I have a mission for you," Gu Qingshan said. "Please give us your orders." "Your Divine King," the Divine Guards replied in unison. "You will guard the Grand Divine Palace. Without my orders, no one is to enter," Gu Qingshan ordered. "Understood," the Divine Guards replied. They quickly walked out and stood guard at the entrance of the Grand Divine Palace. Gu Qingshan nodded satisfyingly and loudly called out, God of lies, enter the palace and listen to my orders. Understood, a voice came from outside the palace. The divine guards then opened a path for the God of lies to enter the palace. Your Majesty, the God of lies bowed. I have a mission for you, Gu Qingshan said. Please tell us, Your Majesty, very quickly. The God of lies left the grand divine palace. At this point, Gu Qingshan announced, everyone has worked hard for the past few days. Leave the materials at the entrance of the grand divine palace and go back to rest. Understood, the divinities replied in unison. They all left the precious materials at the entrance of the grand divine palace and left. The golden flame divinity's voice came again. Your Majesty, why don't you let us enter the temple and learn the method of creating the jade disc? Gu Qingshan sat on the throne and said lazily, this is a secret, it's enough for me to know, you don't need to know. When he said that, the other gods felt that it was only natural. This was something that concerned the fate of the human race, so it was naturally the safest for the divine king to personally control it. The golden flame divinity was unable to remain calm. The secret of the heaven sword was right in front of them. How could they just watch it fall into the hands of others? It was true that Gu Qingshan had been eliminated, but the deity king before him had his own selfish desires and wanted to take the heavenly sword for himself. That's the heaven sword we're talking about. Its power is enough to slay divinities. Wouldn't it be even better if I could hold it in my hands? Countless thoughts flashed through the golden flame divinity's mind. He couldn't help but take a few steps towards the shrine. Immediately, 12 divine guards pointed their weapons at him and ordered him to step back. Every single divine guard was extremely powerful. The golden flame divinity alone was no match for them. The golden flame divinity gritted his teeth. Your Majesty, I advise you not to covet humanity's secrets. Ah? Why is that? Gu Qingshan asked. Oh, because this jade disc will take you to a place filled with danger. Only I, a divinity from the future, would know how to deal with it. No one else would be able to do so, perhaps to convince the divine king, he continued. Your Majesty, you must give up on this secret, otherwise you will die without a doubt. This has already happened in the near future. I believe you wouldn't want to die just like that outside the shrine. All the divinities were stunned. This divinity came from the future, so he knew a lot of things that were about to happen. Gu Qingshan adjusted her posture, comfortably leaned back on her chair, and continued to ask, if I try to pry into this secret, what kind of danger will there be? The golden flame divinity replied, the Lord of Desolation will come to you, kill you, and take the heaven sword. Gu Qingshan didn't say anything. He only smirked. After a brief moment of silence outside the shrine, another voice resounded. Reporting to your Majesty, he is lying. This was the voice of the God of lies. Gu Qingshan asked, which one of his words was a lie? Every single one, the God of lies replied. The divinities were in an uproar. This divinity from the future dared to deceive the divine king. What exactly is he trying to do? Could it be to take that secret for himself? Gu Qingshan lightly chuckled, but her tone became angry and stern. Take him down! Understood. The 12 divine guards shouted. Luo Bingli opened her eyes wide, unable to accept what she just heard. So easily, the problem was solved? This is like a dream. She couldn't help but send her voice. Why don't we just kill that guy and be done with it? Gu Qingshan shook her head. That would be too impatient. Not only would it draw suspicion, it would also cause problems. What problems? Luo Bingli asked. Wait, Gu Qingshan spat out a single word. Luo Bingli didn't have to wait for too long. Faced with this predicament, the golden flame divinity abruptly took out a coin and crushed it. Hurry up and help me, he shouted. The void of space trembled. The figure of light appeared. It descended from above, landing in front of the golden flame divinity, and stopped the other divinities. You can't do anything to him. The divinities all stopped. This figure of light carried the power of countless divinities, manifested through some sort of unique technique. the highest form of intelligence of the divine race, impossible to impersonate and definitely not betray the divine race. That was why the divinities were hesitant. What is it? If I'm not mistaken, you should belong to our era. Why are you protecting a person from the future? Gu Qingshan asked. He didn't mean to offend your majesty, the divine king. He only wanted to take that sword and use its power to change the future of our race, the figure of light replied. He isn't lying, the god of lies declared. Hearing that, the divinities' expressions relaxed a bit. That's true. As divinities, unless they were facing extreme difficulties, they wouldn't easily offend the divine king. Gu Qingshan was surprised. His mission was very clear from the very beginning, that is to find that sword cultivator and kill him, the figure of light explained. Taking the heaven sword away is more important than killing him. You mean, if he obtained that heaven sword or whatever, he would be able to change the future? Gu Qingshan asked. That is indeed the case, the figure of light replied. Gu Qingshan suddenly said, Then I'd like to ask him, in the future where he came from, how many of us divinities are still alive? Caught off guard, the golden flame divinity's mouth twitched a bit, unable to say a single word. The divinities became cautious. This is related to our lives. Why isn't he saying anything? Could it be, hurry up and speak? One of the divinities couldn't help but shout. But the golden flame divinity simply pursed his lips, not daring to say a single word. At this point, he truly regretted relying too much on his foresight ability and using the events of the future to remind the Divine King. So the Divine King was waiting for me here. The golden flame divinity felt a bit emotional. As expected of the king who awakened because of fate, to be able to force me to this point. Sure enough, it was just as he expected. The Divine King sighed. God of lies. At this very moment, I order you to investigate the truth of this king's words. Understood, the God of lies respectfully replied. This golden flame divinity once told me that only a few of us divinities would be able to survive until the future, the rest would all die. Indeed, the majority of the divinities here would die. This was something that had already been determined by history. The golden flame divinity once used these events of history to exchange for Gu Qingshan's help in helping him find Gu Qingshan. The divinities fell silent. No matter who it was, they wouldn't be able to accept the fact that they were about to die. Gu Qingshan shouted again, God of lies. The God of lies dejectedly replied, His Majesty did not lie. All right, withdraw your investigation ability. Gu Qingshan ordered. Understood. For a while, no one said anything else. The figure of light wanted to say something else, but he didn't dare to provoke the divinities any further. Gu Qingshan's voice resounded. He spoke in a low voice. If we are all going to die, then why should I give this secret, this jade disc, and this sword to him? His voice suddenly changed and sounded like he was talking in his sleep. Why not let the matter of changing fate begin right now? The figure of light froze. The golden flame divinity froze. All the divinities trembled. Gu Qingshan continued. Indeed, if I obtain the heaven sword, the fate of the divine race will be rewritten right now. There is no need to wait until all the divinities are dead. He abruptly stood up from his throne, raised his voice, and uttered a resounding roar. Children of the divine race, at this very moment, fate has handed its direction to me. Tell me, do you want to control your own fate with me, or place your hopes on the future? Your Majesty, I want to follow you to change the fate of death. One of the divinities loudly declared. I will follow your Majesty. Another divinity loudly declared. Your Majesty, I will follow your footsteps. Your Majesty, I am your loyal servant. We will listen to your Majesty. The divinities all shouted. In the face of death, the choice was always easy. Gu Qingshan waited until the voices of the divinities died down a bit, then angrily shouted again. Or who do you think that sword should belong to? The divinities and all the divine guards loudly replied, "It belongs to our majesty," Gu Qingshan loudly declared. "That's why I'm sorry, regardless of whether this member of your race came from the future or some other time, our fate should be in our own hands. We must change the fate of death. This secret, as well as the sword hidden within this secret, belongs to this king. If anyone dares to covet this secret..." Clang clang. All the divinities automatically stood at the entrance of the divine palace, standing together with the 12 divine guards. They drew their weapons, facing the figure of light and the golden flame divinity with hostile expressions. What bullshit future, what collective will of the divinities. Compared to that, our own lives are naturally more important. The heaven sword must be in our divine king's hands. The divinities all had the same thought. Sensing what was happening at the entrance, Gu Qingshan appeared pleased and slowly sat down on the divine throne. His tone remained solemn and dignified. "Indeed, this is the will of our entire divine race. It will not change because of the future." At the same time, he stretched his back and sent his voice to Luo Bingli. Luo Bingli was completely stunned. She froze inside the block of ice, unable to comprehend what she just saw. How could this be? With just a few words, the heaven sword's secret became his own. Furthermore, the divine race had already split apart. This split originated from the divine race's present and future. Because the divinities were about to face death, the two sides were irreconcilable. For the sake of their own survival, the divinities wouldn't hesitate to kill the golden flame divinity. That is, if he still dared to covet the heaven sword. Various thoughts flashed through Luo Bingli's mind. She couldn't understand what was going on, or what was going on right now. But she knew one thing clearly. Chapter 844. The Sky Beyond Heaven. Outside the Grand Divine Palace. All the divinities automatically stood guard at the entrance of the Grand Divine Palace, stopping the golden flame divinity and the figure of light. But Gu Qingshan didn't care about this anymore. With a wave of his hand, all the precious materials flew into the Grand Divine Palace and neatly arranged themselves in front of Luo Bingli. Gu Qingshan then pointed at Luo Bingli from afar. The ice shackling Luo Bingli turned into a mist of wind and scattered. Luo Bingli regained her freedom. She landed on the ground and scanned through the precious materials. "There are enough materials. I can already sense that seal appearing in my thoughts. See. I'm going to undo that seal. Protect me." Luo Bingli closed her eyes and tried to undo the seal in her thoughts. See. Gu Qingshan then stood up from her throne, slowly walked through the palace, and stood behind Luo Bingli. This was a crucial moment. Even though he had the situation under control, Gu Qingshan didn't dare to be careless. He silently drew his frost scepter and prepared to unleash a powerful frost divine craft at a moment's notice to stop any attacks that might come his way. After spending all of his soul points to level up War God skills, and learning the God of Frost and Chill skills, it had finally become one of Gu Qingshan's trump cards. Outside the Grand Divine Palace, the golden flame divinity angrily shouted, Do you not care about the future of our race?" A divinity shouted back, "We need to survive first before we can worry about the future." Many divinities agreed. The golden flame divinity gritted his teeth, but couldn't do anything. He was only a divinity, while the entire divinity race was up against him, not something he could deal with. The golden flame divinity turned to the figure of light and whispered, "Quickly think of something." The figure of light replied, "Your Divine Majesty, please believe me, the future is extremely important. Please help him." Hearing that, Gu Qingshan couldn't help but chuckle. "No problem, I will fully support him in killing that human cultivator from the future," he said. The figure of light spoke. "That sword," Gu Qingshan interrupted him and continued, "Strange, killing that person can change the future," he mentioned. "Why isn't he doing it now? Instead, he's vying for the sword with this king?" The golden flame divinity cut in. That is because if I obtain the Heaven Sword, I will be able to change the future for the better. Gu Qingshan sighed and said, greed has blinded your eyes, causing you to forget your mission and only think about fighting for the treasure. He told the figure of light, I now have a way to satisfy both sides, please speak. The figure of light replied, I will send some powerful deities to follow him to find and kill that human cultivator. That way there won't be any problems in the future. And the secret of the Heaven Sword belongs to me. I will personally search for that sword and change the fate of all the divine spirits of our race. That way we divine spirits will no longer be controlled by death, Gu Qingshan said slowly. Hearing that, the divinities all nodded in agreement. Yes, in that case, both the problems he faced in the future and now would be easily solved. The figure of light pondered for a bit, then hesitantly spoke. The search for the Heaven Sword will be very dangerous, you might not survive. Gu Qingshan smiled. I am the strongest divinity, the monarch of the divine race. If I don't do this, should I let someone else do it? The figure of light replied. The golden flame divinity knows a lot of secrets. Although he isn't as strong as you, he will be able to deal with any situation better than you. Are you sure that he knows a lot of secrets, enough to deal with any situation? Gu Qingshan asked. I am sure, the figure of light replied. Then that's good. Gu Qingshan was pleased. He can tell me those secrets as well. This way, not only will I be the strongest divinity, I will also be the divinity who knows the most secrets. Other than me, there is no one more suitable to wield that sword. The figure of light was speechless. The golden flame divinity opened his eyes wide, opened his mouth wide, unable to say anything. After all this talk, not only did I not obtain the right to fight for the sword, I even have to give up a lot of secrets? This, while the golden flame divinity was thinking, Gu Qingshan had already decided. Then it's decided. God of lies, you will be responsible for examining his words, don't let him use lies to fool me. Life divinity, measure divinity, sound divinity, water divinity, take him away and watch as he spits out his secrets, report to me after he's done. Yes, your majesty, the divinities replied. The golden flame divinity was taken away. Only the figure of light was left standing there by himself, unable to say a single word. Gu Qingshan no longer cared about what was happening outside the palace and turned to Luo Bingli. She had already opened her eyes. The seal has been undone, I understand the method to forge the jade disc. Please wait a moment, I will immediately make it, Luo Bingli said. She formed a hand seal to create a flame from the void of space, then began to throw the precious materials into the flame. Gu Qingshan stood on one side with her hands clasped behind her back, silently waiting. After so much hard work, I've finally gotten one step closer to the Heaven Sword. At this point, the figure of light outside the palace suddenly moved. He told Gu Qingshan, Your Majesty, there is a secret I must tell you. What secret? Gu Qingshan asked. The figure of light glanced at the divinities standing guard in front of the palace and said, This secret only you alone will know. Gu Qingshan happily said, Then come in. After turning into the god of frost and chill, he was a bit more confident. The other party wouldn't be able to kill him so easily. Hearing the divine king's words, the divinities made way for him. The figure of light entered the grand divine palace. He glanced at Luo Bingli, who was busy forging the jade disc, then turned to Gu Qingshan. What is it? What do you want to tell me? Gu Qingshan asked. The figure of light muttered, As the divine king, to be able to achieve this much, you have already far surpassed any records of history. What are you talking about? Gu Qingshan pretended to be confused and asked. The figure of light suddenly asked, Your Majesty, what is your goal? My goal? Indeed, the true goal of everything that you do. As Gu Qingshan was about to speak, she noticed a hidden meaning in the other party's words. He slowed down and spoke while thinking. Ever since I found out the true secret of our race, my only goal has been to enter that gate. Only then can we truly control our own fate, the figure of light continued. According to our agreement with the desolate race, you can continue to help them eat humans, and they will eventually allow us to enter that gate. No, Gu Qingshan resolutely refused. Placing our hopes on others is not a reliable thing, only by having the same amount of power. Can we guarantee the fairness of our agreement? The figure of light went silent briefly, then silently nodded. He seemed to have made some sort of decision and spoke. Your Majesty, do you know? In truth, you are living in an illusion. Hearing that, Gu Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. What does that mean? Does the figure of light want to tell me about the phantom images? What does he want to do? Gu Qingshan looked at the figure of light and spoke in a low voice. If you have any secrets, tell this king right away. If you try to confuse this king with some random nonsense, then I'm sorry. Or no, I'm not trying to confuse you. The figure of light shook his head. Your Majesty, I will show you the truth of history. He reached his hand out to Gu Qingshan. Your Majesty, you have used your actions to prove that you are an excellent ruler. Not even your future kin could shake your position. Instead, you have become even more powerful from knowing the direction of the future. Your Majesty, you have now obtained the qualifications to participate in the true history. What do you mean by the word true? Your Majesty, there is no need for you to ask too much. Please hold my hand. I will immediately take you to see the secret of the phantom images. Gu Qingshan went silent. Do we need to fight? As if he didn't know anything, he hesitantly asked. No, the figure of light replied. For the first time, we only need to let you know the truth. As for the rest, we can talk about it later. Gu Qingshan glanced at Luo Bingli. Luo Bingli didn't look at him and sent her voice. This seems to be some sort of contingency plan prepared by the divine race. You need to be careful. Gu Qingshan sent her voice. If I go, what will you do? Don't worry, while you're not here, I will delay the creation of the jade disc until you return, Luo Bingli replied. Gu Qingshan looked up and shouted outside the Grand Divine Palace. 12 divine guards, guard the Grand Divine Palace for this king. Don't let anyone enter or leave. Yes, Your Majesty. The 12 divine guards' voices came from outside the Grand Divine Palace. It was now that Gu Qingshan held the figure of light's hand and muttered, Don't try to trick me, otherwise, even if you are the manifestation of the will of the old gods, I won't let you go so easily. The figure of light spoke. Your Majesty, you will thank me very soon. Thank you? Chapter 845. Saying so, the figure of light's body began to give off a transparent ripple. This ripple completely enveloped both it and the divine king. In a split second, both Gu Qingshan and it disappeared without a trace. The only person left in the Grand Divine Palace was Luo Bingli. She was still crafting the jade disc, but at a much slower pace. The palace was completely empty. Luo Bingli sighed worriedly. In the secret phantom image that she was guarding, the divine race had launched a full-scale invasion and completely destroyed humanity's path of concealment. But now, it seems the divine race had made other preparations as well. If Gu Qingshan hadn't disguised herself as the divine king and fooled everyone, I wouldn't have known about this at all. For some reason, Luo Bingli recalled the conversation she had with Gu Qingshan before. You need to survive and help me. Help you? That's right. Do you really think that I alone can defeat 2 powerful and well-prepared races? Luo Bingli fell into thought. It seems that his assumption was correct. The desolate race is much more powerful than the divine race, much more despairing. If the divine race had a backup plan, then what about the desolate race? As soon as that thought popped up, Luo Bingli couldn't help but shiver. She felt a chill running down her spine. The endless fog of the void. Countless phantom images of different eras were flickering like stars in the night sky. Sometimes they would flicker, sometimes they would disappear, innumerable. What's going on? Gu Qingshan asked. The figure of light replied. Billions of phantom images, each of them contains a specific period of time in the age of old. They truly exist, are connected, but also isolated. I don't understand. Gu Qingshan shook her head. It's very simple. The figure of light pointed at a phantom image that was closest to them and continued. Look, this phantom image is about to reach its end. Gu Qingshan followed where it was pointing, only to see that a certain scene was appearing in that phantom image. The divinities descended upon the drifting moon immortal sect to help the human race rebuild this famous cultivation sect. When the sect was rebuilt once again, all the images stopped. Everything suddenly disappeared. In the phantom image, a new scene appeared. That was the scene before the first destruction of the drifting moon immortal sect. On the screen, immortals and humans started to appear, preparing to rebuild the sect. They seemed to have returned to the past and did not know that they had rebuilt the drifting moon's celestial track. Everything was like a new beginning. Why is that? Gu Qingshan muttered. The figure of light replied. Because their era is only this long, they will have to repeat this process forever. Gu Qingshan seemed to sense something and asked abruptly, You mean I'm also in such a fragment? The figure of light replied. Correct. Within the countless phantom images, there were countless gods of frost and chill, and it was because of our arrival that a single entity like yourself was able to change the course of your destiny. Why is space-time like this? The real space-time is not like this. It always moves forward and never repeat. No one can go back to the past and start over. What you mean is, indeed, the space-time you are currently in is only a fragment of the real space-time. It originated from a spell of the human race. Gu Qingshan shook her head. Humans could not have grasped such a powerful spell, the figure of light continued. Every divine race believed that humans couldn't have grasped such a spell, but they did. Our guess is that humanity used some sort of method to obtain a fragmented inheritance from the bygone era. Gu Qingshan fell into thought and slowly asked. That's why they were able to create the twin swords heaven and earth, and perform such an unimaginable spell? That's about it, the figure of light replied. Gu Qingshan lowered her head and spoke with a defeated tone. I'm actually in a fragment of time? I still can't believe it. The figure of light turned around and spoke to her. There is no time to be emotional, Your Majesty. You must make a choice right now. What choice? In the phantom image you are currently in, the final moment was actually half a year later. At the time, you were still sitting on the throne of the Divine King, ruling over both the human and divine races. If you want to escape from that phantom image and truly live from then on, you will have to face countless trials and tribulations, possibly losing your life at any moment in order to obtain a chance to enter the real world, to become the Divine King in a fragment of time, or to take a gamble and enter the real world. Even if there is a chance of death, you will still have to enter the real world and begin a completely unpredictable future. Between these two choices, Your Majesty must make a choice. Gu Qingshan went silent for a bit, then asked, I have to ask, in the real space-time, what exactly happened to our divine race? The figure of light replied. The majority of the divinities are dead, only a small portion of our race managed to hide within the 9 billion world layers that we created in imitation of the bygone era humans, barely surviving. Gu Qingshan displayed a suitable expression of sorrow. He suddenly recalled a conversation between the Lord of Desolation and the Divine King before he died. At the time, the Divine King said, The reason why we created so many worlds was because we wanted to relive the past, to see what considerations humanity had during the bygone era that led them to give up everything and enter that gate. The Lord of Desolation scoffed. Do you really think you can pry into the ultimate secret of the bygone era? The samsara is not something I can control. You dared to imitate the power of humanity and created it. That is challenging my authority. Lord of the Desolation. The samsara had only just been created. It does not have any power. I offer it to you. These were the Divine King's final words before he died. What kind of secret is there? Gu Qingshan silently remembered this as a thought flashed through his mind. He didn't have time to carefully think about it right now. The figure of light spoke. Your Majesty, please make your decision. Do you want to return to your fragment of time and peacefully reign as king, or do you want to face the harsh trials and do everything you can to advance towards the real world? Gu Qingshan casually replied. Is there even a need to choose? The figure of light looked at him. What do you mean, Your Majesty? Gu Qingshan replied. This king will not live in an illusion. The figure of light went silent briefly before slowly nodding. Your Majesty, I have once again confirmed that you are a king worthy of the hope of the divine race. Your Majesty, you will now face your first trial, Gu Qingshan replied. Go ahead, the figure of light spoke. In the fragment of time that you currently resided in, right around the time of your ascension to the throne, a crucial event occurred among humanity. What was it? A few human cultivators managed to escape our surveillance and went to the desolate world. After studying history, we found that it was after this trip to the desolate world that humanity began to gradually change. Because of that, we have reason to believe that humanity must have discovered some sort of secret in the desolate world. Perhaps humanity's twin swords, heaven and earth, as well as the space-time phantom technique, were obtained during this period. Your Majesty, you are the strongest divinity. You must go to the desolate world and find that secret. Gu Qingshan thought of something. Sure enough, at the end of the age of old, the remaining divinities began to reflect on and revisit history. They finally found out about it. Xie Guhong went to the desolate world and returned unscathed. Humanity slowly began to change. This was also something that Gu Qingshan had already considered. He was already planning to go to the desolate world, because after leaving this fragment of spacetime, he wasn't sure if he would coincidentally be in the same period of time in another fragment, and at this point in time, Xie Guhong was in the desolate world. The figure of light's request was exactly what Gu Qingshan wanted. Very well, as soon as the jade disk to find the heaven sword is completed, I will immediately set off, Gu Qingshan replied. The figure of light spoke. Your Majesty, once you are discovered by the Lord of Desolation, what awaits you will be his wrath. You will definitely be killed by him. Are you sure you want to accept this trial? Gu Qingshan replied. I have to. The figure of light stared closely at him and spoke with a pleased tone. Very well, Your Majesty, I will provide you with some help. What kind of help? You cannot enter the desolate world as a divinity, otherwise you might be exposed. I will use a secret technique to disguise you as a human cultivator, then give you a more reliable identity, and help you sneak into the desolate world. Hearing that, Gu Qingshan froze. I didn't think a divinity would do something like this. This really is. Gu Qingshan appeared a bit nervous. You want this king to disguise himself as a human? Will this method work? He asked with a tone full of skepticism. The figure of light replied. Do not worry, Your Majesty. Disguise is a very good method of concealment. I guarantee that no one will be able to discover your true identity after you disguise yourself as a human cultivator. If that's the case, I will disguise myself once. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.